Sorry, Blaine.
Damn, I mean, I can't believe you'd say that, Andrew. Honestly,
Blaine is
but
saying
no, kind of
that we're
fucked
not
up, honestly.
Yeah, you can't even
those-
say that now. Okay, you can't in the first however long. You can't drop F.
Oh right, let's go.
I mean,
Anti what?
I don't care if you're dropping F bombs. Just don't do that. Don't make that the first thing.
don't do it in the first 60 seconds. I think is the rule.
I actually don't know how like applicable that is to live content. I know that in videos, YouTube doesn't like that.
Are we live?
Yeah, we're live.
Yes, we are.
Hello,
live.
everyone. Hello.
Hello.
What's up, guys?
Yeah, we come to you with only the
Spice.
most.
Someone here's an echo.
This is listener's fault. Listener, turn off the stream.
Shut it down.
Headphones on.
I don't know where you're getting the echo from.
Someone's
It's
getting
probably
an echo.
from me. Let me change.
No. Ping is good. It's on listeners'
go.
end.
Oh, it's
It's
on
not-
listeners. Oh, okay.
It's not though. My
Oh, somebody says they don't hear an echo. So somebody's just lying to us.
Base.
Oh, okay.
Anyways, we come to you with the most enthusiasm, if you can tell, for the new year. For the new year. Yeah, I wanted to say hello to everybody and Happy New Year, and I hope everyone had a good holiday. We are back with
Good
with
riddance
joy.
to fucking 2024.
I mean, do you think 2025 is going to be better?
No, but I'll say the same thing in 2026.
Okay. All right.
How was your guys' holidays?
Pretty good.
A little odd, but pretty good.
I mean, I wouldn't expect anything else. Good. I got to go outside. I went for hikes. So I
The
experienced
guy with
joy.
the echo had 2 tabs open with the stream. That's why.
Great. Love that.
Nice. Thanks. Okay. Well, yeah.
We have
mine was
some
good
spicy
too.
topics this week.
Yeah, we have some topics for folks.
We have some. topics, That's for
Well,
sure.
hold
Yeah.
on, wait. The who brought us here, yada yada.
You can do that, Blaine.
As always, presented headphones.com, #1 place. Buy, learn about audio products. Visit the website, visit the Discord, discord.gg/headphones. Visit forum.headphones.com. Talk to us, give us topics, and again, buy our products.
Nice.
Sorry.
Some of them are good. As this is my thing. Some of them are good.
We also have not good products if you prefer.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've had
For those what like that sort of thing.
I mean, there are people that do like that sort of thing. I was recently doing a review of the Sindara Closed, and it's like, what? Why would anybody buy this?
Or sometimes people will.
But some people do.
Sometimes people don't like a product that sounds good because the hinges explode over and over again.
Yeah. Someone says tells the 490 Pro is the best headphone of 2024. Don't sell it. Yeah, that's our business.
I mean, we
model.
wish we did.
Yeah.
Here's the real like bad luck for us is that we sold the FT1 and we didn't sell the HD 490.
For as often as people are willing to like call us, paid shills and stuff, a hell of a lot of the stuff that we don't recommend, we do sell, and a hell of a lot of the stuff that we do recommend, we don't sell.
Well, if they actually followed,
Clearly we're getting paid a lot.
Yeah, if they followed like the recommendations, and like it's always like one instance where something happens to be a thing that we sell, and then they're like, oh, see, they're clearly
I mean, it'd be
Sure, but they
weird
haven't
if we
looked at everything
didn't
else.
sell the stuff that we recommend. Like the store tries to get stuff that you guys think is good.
I mean,
Well, a lot of the time
any
it-
store would do.
Yeah, like a lot of the time, if we like something, we we'll say to Taryn, "Hey, we should sell this because it's good and people are probably going to want it."
He's not going to want to do that for a while after the FT1.
Yeah,
He's pretty steamed
I mean, I
about that, I think.
Understandably so, but I think that's
Yeah.
a little bit of
hey,
it.
I kind of don't
situation.
care though. Like it's
clip it. Reddit. Resolve at headphones.com does not care that he recommended a headphone that breaks out of the box for you.
No. I care about that. I don't care that this is annoying to carry for Taryn, is what I'm saying.
Sorry, Andrew. The clip already ended and people are already commenting.
This is just how it is.
Yep.
But no, like it makes sense to try and get the good stuff in, right?
Yeah,
And
well,
if
we
people think
can.
that that's the good stuff, then that should be a thing that we try and get in. End of story. And yeah, sometimes it's going to have QC issues, which the FT1 does. So shame.
Well, it's not really a
Future
QC issue;
Vita.
it's a design issue. They
Yeah,
shouldn't
it's
have
a
used a
design
screw on
flaw.
that axis,
Mhm.
but
Right.
it looks like they're fixing it. And I've been nagging Andrew Park for the last week that we need to do a video for. If you don't want to wait for FIO to send you a replacement, you can probably fix it in like 2 minutes for like $5. So we're hopefully going to do like a short on that or something.
Something. We'll do something on that.
Yeah.
So that's a next week thing.
Yeah.
Do we sell the Hyperman Audivina?
Oh, we did at one point. I don't know if we
Oh,
still do.
that's
I think it's listed. I don't know if we've ever sold one.
Let's see.
I can check the store's back ends.
No, I don't do that on stream because I don't know if
The
that's.
Sandara closed for 129. It's getting 4 out of 5 stars. What the hell?
What, the
Yeah, we
Audivina?
No, the Sandara closed.
Oh,
We have
okay.
Audivina for 700.
Well, 4 out of 5 people are wrong.
Someone's no for 21 reviews. It says someone gives it 1 star, trashing it because it is not Wi-Fi. that's my favorite. But no, people are giving it 5 stars. Like, what the hell, man? Somebody has a good take. You're really disappointed in the way these feel and sound. Not very comfortable. It really sounds like something is wrong with these cats. They just sound awful. Would not recommend. Good take.
I think this is something that Kryn has done better than we have done in the past. I do feel like watching Andrew review other people's reviews would be good content. Like just
Maybe.
Andrew sitting here like reading Amazon
Well,
reviews and just
I could
holding
read
his head in his hand.
No, but these aren't even Amazon. These are reviews on our website of people who like. There
No,
are
I
people
know,
who
but
say
you know what
they
I
like
mean.
it. 5 out of
Like-
5 stars. Very nice headphone. Like what?
It would be even funnier if the reviews were even more ridiculous. That's what I was saying.
I imagine a lot of the people buying a Sandara closed aren't like, in the hobby though. They're probably looking for just a.
I wonder if they're troll comments though, right? Like troll, because like this person gives.
Don't you
5 out of
have to
5
buy
stars.
it to review it though?
That's I don't know.
So-
I don't know how any.
It was a
imagine
troll
you do.
purpose.
You think they spent $200 to make other people waste their money?
It's
$200
$129.
for the
$129.
lows.
Like,
$129.
I wonder if you take the cups off, does it just become a Sandara? No, it becomes a Sandara.
No, it doesn't.
No,
it doesn't.
Sandara
It's got
closed,
different
unveiled.
driver and platform and everything.
What happens if you
Although,
take the
in fact,
cups
I
off the
thought that
Audivina?
Nothing
it's
good.
better.
I have tried the
Oh.
is it the R10P or R9P?
Oh no, the
like-
R10P, the planar, right?
That one, if you take the cups off, it sounds better.
Oh, Jack is wondering, does that mean the FT1 Pro would break as well? Well, so my understanding is that they're not all affected by this. It's just that some of the units ended up having a stripped part. Is that correct, Blaine? You followed this
It looks
closely.
like it's well, there's 2 problems. Some people are just having a screw that's unscrewing itself, which is just annoying. But because they used a tiny screw on like an axis that has meaningful force, some of them are shearing, which is why the new ones seem to have just like a normal like retaining pin and a snap ring, so that it's just a solid piece of steel instead of being a really thin little piece of steel that's like shearable.
But
So
I
anyway, if
assume
it breaks,
the-
FIO seems to just send you the pins, but like,
Yeah.
and you may already have it because like people already have units that don't have screws, and those ones shouldn't break. But yeah, it's technically a risk for anything that has the screws, and it will probably happen at some point, at least just unscrewing itself, just because it doesn't look like it's thread locked that well. But it's like a 2-minute fix. The main thing is don't panic if it happens. Odds are you can get it fixed quite quick.
Okay. Let's get
Should
into
we
our
tell people
topic.
the topic? Should we tell people what the topics are going to be before we get going?
Yeah.
So
Well,
we've got
so,
4
yeah.
main topics and then normal news and impressions of Fight Club. How much should you trust measurements? What does it mean to be scientific or objective in audio? What gear have you changed your mind on over time and why? Something that you've fallen out of love with, something that you've come to appreciate more with time. What do you think were the big trends in personal audio in 2024, both in products that were released and in the discourse in the community, and how have you felt about them? Then we'll get into news and impressions, and then we've got Fight Club, where the main topic is why is using a single metric to judge a product good or bad? So Cyanide score, target curve adherence, etc. And then Spicy Hour.
Okay.
I have joined the war on Cyanide on the side of Cyanide.
Oh, really?
Oh, we're gonna fight. We're gonna
Excited to
fight.
hear your reasoning there. But first, how much should you trust headphone measurements?
I think a lot of this comes down to what's meant, because the term trust the measurements can mean trust that these are accurate, trust that these are useful, or trust that these are applicable to you. Kind of three different things.
Yeah.
The first one of them being accurate, I think, is the biggest problem.
I don't know. I think
no, sorry, the representative.
yeah,
one of them being
Yeah, that's the
representative.
question. Like,
yeah.
what is inaccuracy in this use case, right? And that's
Yeah.
because everyone wants to go to immediately, if it's on the line, it must be something that I'm hearing, which is
Yes.
usually an overreach.
I tend to tell people, like, you should trust the measurements, because the alternative in many situations is trust some random person on the internet who is likely doing the whole purchase validation thing, copium thing, whatever. And even if you know, the measurement isn't necessarily representative of sound at your eardrum here, or maybe it's on an inferior, like, let's say you're looking at IEMs and you're looking at 711 data instead of 4620 or 5128 data, right? Even if that's not, let's say, quote unquote accurate, it's still way better than, you know, ignoring all of that, because it's the, you know, the sanity check in a way, right?
Walking
are the
around
people-
with
But the sanity check
imperfect
can be
visibility
insane.
is much better than walking around blind.
well, yeah,
Walk around with what?
Imperfect visibility.
visibility is
that's
still better than being completely blind.
yeah.
There's an exception to this. Like, there are illusions, you know?
Yes,
Like,
yes.
it's better to not think that there is, you know, a safe place to stand when there's a gaping pit. And there are instances where measurements can mislead people. I mean, like, I think the big thing here is, like, it's about what does trusting mean to us, right? Like, this is just gonna drag us back into Wittgenstein town, because the thing is, you know, is the question, is this an accurate representation of what was going on in the condition where it was measured? Yeah, I mean, almost certainly. It's very unlikely the measurement is fundamentally wrong in terms of the sound pressure on the rig that was measured. The question is, does the circumstance under which it was measured log to your experience, right? Is that going to predict
yeah,
what you're
I
having?
don't
It's
think
like,
that's the only element of the term trust, though, because there's also an element of, like, you have, if someone mentions it in chat, like, there's people who will review without measurements and be very anti-measurement, and they'll tell you, oh, all these things.
people.
No, but well, okay, good example is Zeus, right? Like, he doesn't believe in measurements at all. Come on, you know him.
If you had seen his headphones, do you
I have.
know?
did.
Yeah, then how can you call Zeus people?
I
He
mean,
has headphones that are covered in hentai.
Anyway, pivoting
You know.
from that,
point being, if you are trying to get a sense of how something, like, before you buy something, right? If you are looking to purchase something and you are trying to get a sense of how is this thing potentially going to perform for me, a human being, a real human boy or girl,
Real human
Allegedly.
being.
allegedly, how you know, trusting the measurements is going to do you a lot. It's going to be a lot more beneficial to you than trusting a somebody, you know, who is just saying whatever about it. And I don't mean to single out Zeus in that particular instance, but he's a good example. There are many people like that who are like, no, measurements don't blah blah blah, right? But if you are looking to purchase the product, you damn well better inform yourself. And so in that sense, it's like, you know, yeah, you should trust the measurements. Maybe not in the sense of, like, you know, this is exactly how everything is going to be on your head or at your eardrum, but you should, like, when it comes to, like, the question of, like, trustworthiness, measurements are essential.
Well, I think the biggest issue is the fact that both HRTF variation and HPTF variation aren't broadly well understood. There's a lot of people that dislike measurements, not because they just have an arbitrary objection to them, but they've tried things and it's not necessarily aligned with a particular measurement for that headphone that they've seen. So they've come to the conclusion that either these measurements are, so impossible to interpret that it's pointless to even try, or that the measurements are just outright wrong / useless. When a lot of the time, I think the problem is that, when you are showing a single line measurement, a lot of people do trust that that is the truth. That is the frequency response for that headphone. And so a lot of people assume, well, if I can hear, I'm hearing something which is different to that measurement, or maybe I'm not hearing that peak which is showing in that measurement, I can't use measurements. That there's something here which is there's a disconnect. But actually, and this is why I'm quite excited about the sort of whole move to showing HPTF variation rather than the single line, is because that's kind of the next step. It actually shows us what the range of variation that people can expect is, rather than just a single line that people either have to trust implicit or just assume some level of variability and hope that it goes in the right direction.
There is something actually I did want to mention about the HPTF variation thing that I want to ensure people, even us,
sorry, before we talk about it, can I just throw one of those up on screen just so people kind of who may not have seen it know what we're talking about? Let me.
Actually, we have a new visualization of that we're from someone we're working with. Griffin has it. Eyebrow
for
raised.
which headphone?
I've got the one for the Headphone 2GT. Let me.
He didn't give us HPTF. He just gave us positional.
That is HPTF
Positional
variation.
still, it is, and still. So this is I just want to kind of like back up a little bit, because I actually think that even from the language that we've used on this, so okay, perfect. And actually, the Headphone 2GT is a good example of this, because I think there was something in that review that the language that you and Douglas used, or I think it was actually more just that this part wasn't made as explicit, that when you're looking at something like this, HPTF variation, you actually do need to look at the legend at the bottom to understand. Wait, Griffin, is this up on the screen, or are we just looking at Cameron's?
Oh, we're just looking at Cameron's.
Okay, so you have to look at the legend at the bottom to understand, and you'll note that these are on industry standard pinup. And
there's no labeling at the top.
There's no labeling at the top, but okay, but more importantly, this is something that was mentioned in Blaine's presentation. I believe I mentioned it in the video that I did on this. But to the extent that you see variation for these different ears, that is an accident. That is not intentional, because these ears are all trying to be anthropometric. They're all trying to point at the same, at like average of some kind, right?
And they're also specifically trying to meet the same standard, which is the ITU-T 3.3 / 4.3.
And so the problem with indicating HPTF variation, or it's not a problem, but like the challenge in indicating HPTF variation is this is HPTF variation, or non-HRTF related HPTF variation, or HPTF, whatever you want to call it, for the measurement rigs, not all humans. So this doesn't indicate the range.
Hashtag not all ears.
That's right. This doesn't indicate the range for how humans are going to hear this. This indicates only the range for how two measurement rigs or multiple measurement rigs hear this thing. And I think that that's not sufficiently reflected even in our language when we're describing this, that this is still just a limited view because it doesn't include, the range of possible ears. And
but this is still a hell of a lot better than just showing a single line that people have to trust 100%. Is going to be representative of them.
100%.
Whereas like
100%,
with this,
yeah.
If they, if they look at a measurement and there's no 10 kilohertz peak, but they listen to it and they hear a big 10 kilohertz peak, a lot of people would then come to the conclusion, well, either the measurements are wrong or they're not telling me anything useful because I'm hearing something different. Whereas even if this isn't going to show the full variation and all the differences that you might expect from real human ears, because you need a hell of a lot more testing in order to get a complete picture, and it's probably going to be a massive variation. But this is still so much more useful than just a single line.
Yeah, and
it conveys that there is inherent variation in our actual, not just our experiences subjectively, but in the actual effect on our own heads.
Yeah,
because that's the big thing is a lot of people.
Space.
Yes, because a lot of people are under the impression that the headphone is going to behave consistently across heads, or that that frequency response describes how everyone is going to hear something.
Yeah.
when it's not. And a lot of arguments stem from that, because people go, well, maybe it's I just prefer something different. But actually, it's not even just you prefer something different. You may actually be hearing something different. That headphone is genuinely behaving different on your head.
Yeah. And actually, this gets into, it's related to, I was just doing working on a video on the Sundara closed. I may actually end up refilming it, but it's not important really. But what is important there is that it has, major high Q peaks in the treble. So very narrow, fine grained peaks in the treble. And what comes out of some of this, I think, is for a lot of people, they'll see that and be like, okay, this is what I need to fix with EQ. But because of HPTF variation, you can't be as confident about that, I think. And so
In
indicating
my
that there is variation is already enough to kind of like, show people like, this confidence that we have in, okay, this is exactly what you need to notch out in this, particular band. That already helps.
I'd be curious to get your takes on stuff like auto EQ, because that, and sort of a lot of the, like, Rune's just introduced a new tool to do headphone correction and stuff
Well, isn't the
automatically.
Rune one
I
based
think
on?
we've discussed
is,
it on the
yeah.
stream before that our problems are largely with the treble, but they might still steer people towards a better result if they're using a truly bad headphone.
Yeah. Because I think
mean-
that's another thing which kind of steers people away from EQ, is they try stuff like that, thinking that it is genuinely making something flat on their head, and then the result sounds bad because it's trying to correct narrow
And then you've
peaks in the
ruined
treble.
the technicalities.
Yeah.
I've dubbed EQ APO as the technicalities shredder.
Yeah.
I think.
Well,
I mean,
because, like, oh, sorry, I just one more thing. Yeah, because my issue is that a lot of the people that dislike or distrust measurements, it's not actually that they have something, again, arbitrary against measurements. It's that their experiences with how their subjective experience correlate with the measurements, either just looking at frequency response or things like trying to correct a headphone frequency response with EQ, have not produced good results. And it's not been made clear to by the people providing the measurements why some of those things are the case. A lot of the time, it is almost presented, or has been presented, as if this is the absolute truth and you should trust it implicitly. And if you disagree, then you're the one that's wrong.
I mean, and
Well,
this is a problem with.
that I was just gonna say,
Go
one
ahead.
thing that could be done is some sort of, like you take a headphone like this is the Aria Unveiled. It performs way more consistently across the fixtures and different heads. What could be done there is to say, well, this is, give you some sort of like consistency index. As to say, like, this is more likely to be predictive, or highly predictive, less medium predictive, or whatever, right? And then that can probably help people, because a lot of the time when you're looking at even HPTF variation, it's it might not even be clear that that's what's being evaluated with the range. Anyway, sorry, go ahead, Blaine.
So there's sort of two things here. Just to touch briefly on the auto EQ, I actually think that people sell it short because we're also used to having pretty good headphones. Like, the median headphone is so bad that I think that the fact that it corrects generally low variation ranges in the mid bass through, upper mids is going to improve the majority of stuff. Yako's thing, where he has a parameter where it only makes broad ranging shelf adjustments above a certain cutoff frequency, was like objectively correct. I think that maybe it may be implemented a little high by default in auto EQ, but that's also something you can change. So I think that auto EQ is quite a good idea, and I think that it has improved audio for the majority of people in the same
Do
way
you know
that
if the Rune
Constantine's EQs
implementation
have.
does the same thing with the shelving at high frequencies, or is it just going full ham?
I think those are just
Isn't the-
oratories presets.
Yeah, those are Constantine's, aren't they?
I haven't
So-
looked at them in a long time, so I don't know what his approach is.
Well, I mean, obviously, with Constantine, you can trust him to be practical about this, but you'll notice he doesn't do a lot of high Q adjustments in general, and never above a certain frequency because of that exact fact.
Okay.
Apparently, Rune also has Yako's data. Interesting. I would use oratory
does,
ZQs there if you can. Just because Constantine is doing it himself, and there is something to be said for having a bit of human touch. What I was going to say,
Yeah,
though,
so
about the
actually,
general premise of...
sorry, no, I
Yeah.
wanted to springboard off of human touch because I feel like something we have not really talked about is that headphone measurements are produced and presented by people. And when it comes to the question of should you trust headphone measurements or how much should you trust headphone measurements, a lot of that comes down to how much you trust the operator's capability in doing the measurements as well as presenting the measurement and how they do that. And I think there's a good argument that many people don't meet the standard that we would want for trusting the data.
I'm not sure about the like. I don't know how many people are out there like deliberately trying to like create
I'm not saying
measure or
it's
measure
deliberate.
headphones.
I'm not
Well, but
saying you
that's
have
the
to
question of
trust in
right?
their like
But
desire
that,
to produce useful data, but at a certain point, it does kind of become a question of how much do I trust their methodology. Like you can have you can invest a lot of money
well, I don't know how
in
much of
doing
that is
measurements while
this.
still not producing very good data.
This does get to the Wittgenstein question about what do we mean by trust, because in that sense, it's more just like, well, do we agree with the methodology? And in many cases, we don't. Right? Like we would say, well, or do we agree with this presentation
Well,
of
the
the data?
reason we would disagree would be that it produces data that we deem untrustworthy.
Untrustworthy is weird to me in that sense.
It's semantics hour again, boys.
It really is, because like to me, we're talking about trust is like the question is partly like, is there somebody there, deliberately trying to, create a narrative? And there are some that maybe do this. I'm not saying that that's not the case, but I
I
would
wasn't
say
even saying that.
The Diana V2 has more bass than the Diana V2.
So if
Wait,
we go
what?
back to the origin of Old Norse of the word trust, which starts from
Jesus
Troust.
Christ. Anyway, I think we all kind of agree on what you're saying there, Griffin. I'm being pedantic about the language because I think there's also another layer there of I don't trust data from certain sources because I don't necessarily believe that they've been careful about whatever, right? It's not that I don't trust, like, it's not that I think they're deliberately trying to like fuck with me. You know what I mean? I just
Yeah,
don't
no,
think
I'm
they're
not. I'm
careful.
not saying I don't
Yeah.
trust them because they have some motive that they
Yeah.
are
Okay.
enacting that is duplicitous or malicious or whatever. But it's just once you become familiar with certain people's approach to taking and presenting data, you can make a judgment of how much you would trust the output and presentation from that person. And there are a lot of for me personally, I don't know about the rest of you, but there are a lot of sources of data that I just won't look at because I don't trust the data output.
Yep.
Tommy in chat with the good point. Disclosing the methodology of measurement is always a good one.
That's critical. A lot of the time, if I don't trust a measurement, it's not because I've got a particular like bad experience with that source that's led me to. It's just the fact that I don't know what their methodology is. Like if they just throw a line on screen and
Oh my
don't
God.
even tell you like how it's been measured, is it being compensated to something? Is this an average?
I get this all the time when I'm arguing with Taryn about something. Where he'll show me a measurement, and I'm like, I don't know what this means because it doesn't.
Yeah.
And yes, it's always pulled from Squiggling.
Yeah,
by
he
the
does that
way,
all the time. Yeah.
Yes.
and I'm like, there's no indication of what this was measured on. I don't know if the target that's being used is appropriate because half the time on Squiglink it's not. Shots fired, Mark. I don't know I don't know anything about what this measurement is, but it's being used as a proof for something, and I think that that's where a lot of these limitations lie. It's in the communication of this.
I mean, the same thing goes for source data.
Unsurprisingly.
Like I've had times where someone will say like, "Oh, well, Amir's measurements of this look different to yours." It's like, well, Amir doesn't tell anyone how his analyzer is configured, so I can't replicate his testing. Like,
although in that case, the magnitude of the differences is quite small.
No, it's not the same degree as
quite
rig
different.
difference in a headphone.
Yeah, or
But
like an
still-
industry standard rig versus like a mini DSP ears.
Yes. Although with the SourceGear one, part of the other issue is that even though the magnitude is going to be different in terms of what the differences you see, the magnitude at which people alter their purchase decision is also very different. Like people will buy something else because it's got 1 dB more SINAD.
You know, that's just schizo shit. Like, imagine
Plain.
that's insane. I'm sorry, it's literally insane. That would be like saying, "Oh yeah, this car has 0.05 mpg more efficient engine. I'm gonna go with that one." Clearly, that's a huge difference.
People
That is
do that in audio.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know, and that's in the noise floor.
We're in
Rob.
the
Yeah, I mean, well, so I've got a video coming to us for the topics that we're talking about today. Some of them are sort of slightly reworded versions of what I discussed in the video tomorrow, which is going to be about an hour long. So get a cup of hot chocolate or something ready. But part of one of the things I show is like when people judge something based on a 1 dB difference in SINAD or whatever, the biggest determining factor in which of two products has higher SINAD when they're that close is when did you take the screenshot? Like it's literally nothing to do with the product itself. It's a case of here's the screenshot that you usually see. Now here's a video of what the dashboard actually looks like when that screenshot is taken. And it's like
I have a hot take.
121, maybe it goes down to 119, goes back up to 123. It just depends on when you take the screenshot. And if you wanted to, you could make something look better than something else by being nicer about when you take the screenshot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to be fair, this is an example of where that means that you should be using longer FFT windows, right? Like if you're having that, what that means
is
is
not related to the FFT necessarily.
I mean, if it's varying, what's happening is that just because of the random noise, some of it is in, one window length more than another, right? So what that means is that you technically need a longer period of integration in order to get closer to the true average.
But Cameron's talking about the visualization from the analyzer, which is not. It doesn't look like an FFT like at all.
Oh, I know. I mean, I'm just saying, like, this is something that
number is not affected by the FFT settings and stuff. It's a separate thing.
Okay,
I do want to address something in chat because this is something that I think we've talked about a little bit. But Joel says we should ban measurement sources that don't have detailed documentation to go along with the measurements. I understand the sentiment there. I actually think it would be more effective to gamify it. And
I think that we should just sue people who publish incorrect measurements. Just go full slap with it.
We should have a ranking system for measurement quality, basically, where based on how well they disclose the methodology and how trustworthy the equipment used is and how calibrated, whatever, how in step it is with some standard that we could either look to the actual standards for or determine as a community. They would be prioritizing search results.
Yeah.
I'd like to introduce a postulate. If you pay enough white men to analyze any topic, eventually they will reinvent 538. Because what you're describing is how they did their poll weighting. Well, Given enough time, an arbitrary group of white nerds will reinvent 538.
Yeah, I mean, did they invent the
topic.
concept of community-based ranking?
No, I mean, obviously weighting sources by their presumed accuracy is ancient, right? But it's just sort of funny to me that everything... you always, for every given topic, for every interest, you go through the same thing of, first we need data. Okay, now we need to have data on how good our data is. Now we need to have a model that predicts how much the bad effects of this data will impact our aggregating data. It just all inevitably does the same thing over and over and over.
Yeah, I mean, the main issue with the sort of idea of ranking sort of measurement quality in terms of how well people are doing it is that then that there's got to be a sort of one either individual or entity that is sort of making that decision, and
it's me.
There's not necessarily always going to be what if whoever is doing that decides that actually a single line frequency response measurement is what you should be showing rather than like HBTF variation or something. Like if that's part of their criteria, then are ours better, or do we have to try and argue that this is a better approach and then other people get marked down? What if they disagree? Like you've got one arbiter of truth there, and that's a little bit dangerous, especially in an area like this where there are competing standards,
Well,
competing companies making
If
equipment.
if
And
people disagree, they can make their own ranking.
oh, good.
this is
This
the
is going to make
ACD.
things
We've
so
got one
much
of
more
the
clear.
yeah. We've got too many standards. Let's make one
No, but
standard that
in a
combines all the
way,
standards
doing
into one
so,
standard. Now we have
yeah.
one more standard.
But in doing so, this also kind of is a forcing function for people to improve the um even basic things like ensuring that they indicate what the thing was measured on, what pinna was used, etc. Right? Makes
I guess
squiggling, actually have the appropriate safety rails.
I mean, the ideal situation would be that the sort of the community at large has a good understanding of what some of the common issues and methodology and or equipment are for measurements, and kind of can discuss in open forums and call out or praise when people are doing that well or
I think
bad.
like a small section of the
Yeah.
community gets
I-
that.
That's
and
this is the problem, is that right now there is sort of a lack of community understanding as to some of these problems, which means that it's not necessarily obvious when someone pulls up a random line on Squiglink and says, here's a measurement for this headphone. It's like, I don't know what the hell this is telling me, because there's literally no information. But that's not obvious to a lot of people. And
yeah.
why would it be? Is, we forget that we are in the deep nerdy territory quite a lot of the time. And a lot of people also are just, there's going to be resistance to it because of the fact that people do want an easy answer. They just want, to be able to easily compare a single line.
Yeah.
Something I wanted to go that I was trying to get into some time back, and I just want to go back to for a sec. This is by no means exclusive to us. I'm reminded of the fact that in cars, just because cars are a common metaphor, because again, we're pretty much all men in this hobby, and there's an overlap of auto enthusiasts and audio enthusiasts, to be perfectly frank, just by demographics. Places like people will get mad because, oh, your 0 to 60 time is different from this, or, oh, the manufacturer lied because this person couldn't get the same 0 to 60 that they got, or whatever. And the thing is, all these things are just quantifications in a circumstance, right? But people seem to get that more intuitively with cars, because they can see, oh, this time around the Nürburgring is different than this time around the test track for Consumer Reports, or for this was wet or whatever. Like there's more of a sort of, and this wasn't inevitably true, right? Like they kind of went through these teething issues just decades before us. But it's sort of interesting to me that people can't seem to scale from, oh, well, maybe if this car, Top Gear saying this car is 0.1 second off from what Consumer Reports or Motor Trend or whatever says, doesn't necessarily mean either of them is lying or wrong. It's just that was the actual circumstance in the actual moment in the place. Hopefully, like, people can get at least to the level of understanding that they're at there, I guess.
I don't know. There's a bigger issue, I think, of just like, because people have had a bad experience with data in some respect, in the sense that it didn't line up with their experience for whatever reason, right? It is immediately a signal that all this stuff is, it's not measuring the relevant stuff. Therefore, they completely dismiss all of it. And so in that sense, it's like you do have kind of like a watershed for the people who bother to go one step further, because all it takes is to go one step further and see actually, okay, what's actually going on here. And on the other side of it, you have people just writing it off completely. And unfortunately, that other side is getting larger, not smaller.
Well, a lot of it's just, it's just about how intuitive it is. Like with the 0 to 60 time thing, if someone says, well, I didn't get the same 0 to 60 time, it's pretty intuitive for people to go, well, ground is slippy, therefore car can't go as fast. Like that's, you don't need to sort of know anything. Whereas part of the issue in audio is not only that it's more difficult to understand the, acoustic and mechanical reasons to why headphones may vary, or why different rigs are going to be different. Why, just the fact alone that like different people's heads are going to have different HRTFs. Like that's not an intuitive thing. People, unless they are taught that, then that's not necessarily going to be something that they are automatically aware of. Whereas ground slippy is pretty intuitive. But also, and the issue that kind of compounds
is
it
just
is
different tracks, right? Like it's literally for the same reason. The geometry difference is the same. It's the same reason that a given racetrack is different.
I'm not saying it's rocket science. I'm just saying it's not on the same level as ground is slippy.
Mm.
But the other issue is that there has been a lot of sort of narrative and discussion where, someone will say like, well, I felt that this headphone was, too dark for me or something. And someone else will on Headphone or wherever go, no, here's the measurement. Look, it's fine. You're wrong. Like the answer isn't to actually
Your
look at the
perception is
reasons as
broken.
to yes, exactly. And that's what they're told. And so understandably they go, well, fuck the measurements then. And they
Mhm.
don't want anything to do with it. Like part of the issue is how the community or parts of the community has been kind of treating these measurements as both overly absolute and overly applicable to all listeners.
Well, and that's also at the fault of the visualizations themselves and
Yeah.
how they're sort of presented.
Partially.
I
Yeah.
think there's another shortcoming as well, which is I've said this before, and feel free to fight me on this, but I kind of think the biggest failing, or one of the biggest failings of the the audio science, so like the Harman work and so on, is in its communication, and people
Yeah.
basically not considering that people would take this and run with it as absolutes in the way that they have, and that has driven so
Yeah.
many people away from actually understanding the stuff from a scientific perspective, and bothering to figure out what's actually going on with these measurements and HRTF variation and so on.
I mean, a lot of people think that, oh, well, Harman is clearly wrong or bad because I prefer things that aren't exactly Harman.
Exactly.
And it's like, well,
It
actually, the
invalidates
Harman
their
research, if you do read it, which
Yeah.
is not a reasonable thing to expect people to go and do, but it would be reasonable for the people
Yeah.
who have/should have done so to be communicating it properly, that actually, no, the Harman research tells you that, yeah, that's quite likely. Like, if
And-
you're over 50, statistically, you're
Yeah.
going to prefer a signature which has less base than the Harman curve. It's not
Yeah.
that the Harman curve is wrong. It's that it was never meant to be, this is perfect for everyone. That's not
Yeah.
the point, but a lot of people treat it as such.
And it is the ivory tower problem all over again, right? And people are the people have a hard time getting past the gates. This dovetails into the next topic. I don't know if we want to go there yet, which is
Blaine?
Huh?
You good to move
What-
on to the
what-
next one?
Yeah.
what does it? Well, this is related, but what does it mean to be scientific or objective in audio? Now, Blaine, you're not going to do the Ayn Rand thing again.
I'm just saying.
You're always just saying. All right, so how do we want to tackle
think-
this? What?
Well, it was Cameron's idea.
my-
I feel like letting him open up.
Mhm.
would make
I think
sense.
my quickest summary of how to describe what is being scientific is judging your conclusion based on actual available evidence. Simple as that. And I think a lot of people don't do that. In both directions. Like there's a lot of
Man.
people that stand in one corner going, I refuse to look at data. This pink fuse makes a massive difference. You're an idiot if you think otherwise. And not only am I not going to look at data, but I'm actively going to decry any kind of data or blind testing or whatever as evil and wrong. That's not helpful or scientific because you're not looking for, or even you're willfully blinding yourself from evidence. But on the other hand, there are also times when people will either decry something as an objective fact or truth, even if there isn't evidence to substantiate it. Sometimes mixing their opinion in with data, just in a way that actually the data doesn't conclude that. It is still your opinion, but you're treating it as fact. Or people that will, say something thinking that it is genuinely the truth and is sort of scientifically understood or has been proven when it's not.
Mm-hmm. I'm reminded of. I had a conversation recently on our forum with a very nice person, well-intentioned person, who was, and I'm not. If you're watching, I'm not putting you on blast for this. It was a good conversation. Well, basically, it was where we disagreed about the technicalities thing and EQ for FR at the eardrum and so on. Right, the part of sort of an extension of that thread as well on the forum that was quite good. But this was a person who was telling me like, oh no, I'm not one of the crazies. I'm not one of the like the people who believe in snake oil and whatever else. I believe in, very, like the science essentially. But then proceeded to suggest to me that a certain headphone. Actually, I think it was the Shanling headphone. Would change with cable with this, or would sound different with a specific cable, and then we started going into that conversation. And by all accounts, this was a great conversation. This was not somebody who was anti-science, but had experiences that this person could not explain with the sort of existing paradigm that they had in their head of metrology and the audio science as we know it. But where I think a lot of the mistakes that people make when they're doing this is they will this is my hobby horse or my soapbox, but people will constantly conflate cause and effect. They will think my experience has X about it, therefore the thing has X about it, right? Or whatever it is. Not thinking, well, my experience has X about it. Let's look at, let's try and figure out why, right? And just sort of leaving that as a bit of an open question, because I apologize if there's something else going on in this scenario, right? Because I'm not able to actually test this, but I will bet that whatever differences people are hearing with cables and stuff like this is down to an SPL difference, right?
Or placebo.
Or placebo, yeah. But if they're genuinely hearing a difference, it's highly likely down to just be an SPL difference, and the louder one is more preferred. Therefore, it sounds more whatever all these different qualities are. So I think what it means to kind of circle back to the question here, I think, to me at least, what it means to be scientific or objective in audio is that you're willing to hedge against your own, like you're willing to basically apply the scrutiny to your own experiences, and to say, like, maybe I am having, for me this is, I'm having this experience, but maybe it is a framing effect, whatever, a psychoacoustic effect, a placebo, and those are not equivalent, but like maybe it's some of these things, some of these factors that are leading me to have this experience, not there is some, not that there is some magical thing that we aren't measuring.
Having a willingness to have both a constructive discussion with someone that you perhaps disagree with, but also, as you say, being willing to, apply the scientific method and apply controls and look to actually try and get a conclusive answer.
Well, and be willing to be wrong, like approach it with that, like, oh, maybe I'm wrong about this.
Okay. That's the thing. If you refuse to look at any evidence or even have a discussion about it, maybe just because it disagrees with your belief, be it that you believe that audiophile fuse makes a difference, so you're not going to do any blind testing, you're not going to look at any measurements or anything, you're not willing to accept anything other than what you've had experience with subjectively. But also conversely, if your position is that like something that does make a clear measurable difference is inaudible, but you're completely unwilling to look at any evidence that might disagree with that, that's equally unscientific. Like a big problem is that a lot of people aren't willing to have a discussion about stuff. And it's if you try and talk to someone about, do cables make a difference, that happens a lot. Like, well, you should just use your ears, it's obvious. It's like, no, well, no, we need, this isn't actually a scientific approach. And the conversation.
What's interesting to me about those folks is that they tend to respond very poorly when you say, I did use my ears and I didn't hear it.
Yes, yeah, use your ears. No, not like that. But that's not me having to go at like subjectivism, because like with the DAC over sampling filters thing, one of the things I found most frustrating about that was that there was something which I felt did make an audible difference, but I wasn't just decrying as a fact that it did make a difference with the only evidence being my subjective experience. I like went on to, forums and stuff saying, hey, I want to try and get a conclusive answer to this. I'm putting together a test. Please suggest controls and things that I can do to try and make this as rigorous as possible. And for a lot of people, the answer wasn't, here are some controls and some things you can do to make this more scientific and more useful. It was, you're an idiot for even looking at this. It was just like complete discouragement to even try asking questions or look at it at all. It's like, well, you
didn't have you weren't old enough.
Oh yeah, I wasn't old enough. That was one of the ones from people, which ironically in this particular situation, actually the inverse.
It's beneficial.
Helps to be younger. But yeah, it's like, if you're decrying someone's attempt to look at, if you think someone's wrong, don't just stand yelling that they're wrong. Tell them some ways in which they can get an answer to the question, which might show that their initial hypothesis or whatever was wrong. That's how things move forward. Even in, scientific fields like chemistry and nuclear physics and stuff, there's a lot of people that disagree with each other, but they don't just stand there yelling at each other that you're an idiot for believing what you believe. It's
Mhm.
no, you should test this and you should use these controls, and then we'll see whether you're right or not. That's
I
how
had-
There
things should be.
there is a falsibility problem, of course, and this is something that we run into a lot with the folks
Falsibility?
with
Falsifiability or falsibility?
Oh, but Brandon's point, sorry, just when you tell those people, I don't hear a difference, and then they respond with, well, your system isn't resolving enough.
precisely, and that's an attempt to
or
move
your ears
something.
aren't good enough.
Yeah.
Tears.
Anyway, sorry.
Broken.
I didn't-
So that's an instance of people trying to move something out of the space of being falsifiable, right? They're attempting to say,
Thank you.
okay, well, I believe this to be true. You're presenting something which would attempt to, make that incorrect. So I'm just going to move the goalposts. And the question of, and this gets us into philosophy of science, unfortunately, but it is actually fairly important. The question of whether something can be falsified is an important question in whether something is a scientific concept, right? Because if something can't be falsified, if there's no evidentiary way to test something, then what you have is an article of faith, right?
Mhm.
Like
I think
Yeah.
that's less of an issue in audio often, though, because a lot of the time it's not like the ability to test whether something has a specific subjective effect is quite difficult, but the ability to test whether something is audible or not is pretty easy.
Yes,
most
but you will find that the cope flows in rivers whenever it is
Mm.
found to not be audible.
Yeah.
Like, that's sort of the problem there, is that you show that people can't hear something under one circumstance, and immediately it becomes the test that is at fault.
Yeah. It doesn't mean that there's
Someone in chat is arguing again. Okay, hold on. Do we have an epistemological anarchist in chat? Ban Mark D.
Wait, what is the? Read what was
Every
the comment?
Paul Feyerabend fan should be banned.
I don't see the comment.
Spicy take, a falsification criterion like that is actually dubious in philosophy of science, which means he's either a Feyerabend guy or a Kuhnian, and in either
Kuhn.
case, straight to hell.
Okay, move on.
No stop on the way, straight to hell.
How you doing, Griff?
It's okay to be a Kuhnian.
It's not okay to be a Kuhnian.
It's okay. It's okay.
Anyway,
Mark said
we
something
can
that
move
I
on.
found really funny, which is that he learned that the cable's power, etc. forum on HeadPhi is moderated as a double-blind testing free space, meaning any mention of it is prohibited. And there is a
Really?
law that concludes double-blind testing is wrong.
well, no, it's not
Ooh.
it's not the power forum. It's every forum on HeadPhi except for the Sound Science forum. Like that's
Fair.
actually that's a site rule of HeadPhi is that you're not allowed to bring up.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Here's a possibly spicy question. How do you guys feel about where the sort of level of requirement for that kind of like evidence should be? I.e., if people are discussing something as a possibility, saying that, I prefer using this, I think it makes a difference. I don't have a blind test, but I'm also not proclaiming that it is a fact, and I'm like, they're willing to accept that it may not be the case, but even if it is placebo,
That's
it's
fine.
making improvements to them, so whatever. Are you guys okay with that? Because like, there's a lot. Part of the other issue is that there's a bit of a debate between people that want to be able to discuss the what ifs and other people that go, "Where's your blind test?" It's like, man, I'm just trying to listen to music. Can you chill?
Yeah,
Which
it's
I
really
kind of
annoying.
get. Yeah, you would
Well,
need
I
to
mean,
do a
this
double
is-
blind test for everything. But then there's also people that on the other side go, it's not reasonable to do a double blind test for everything, so I should be able to, treat this as a fact, and it's not required for me to prove otherwise.
At a certain
You
point,
have to
it
prove
becomes
that it's not audible rather than that it have to
Yeah.
prove that it is.
At a certain point, it becomes very difficult to be declarative about anything. And no, we're not getting into
That
Hume
doesn't
here.
stop people.
But it does. Yeah, it certainly doesn't stop people. But to Cameron's question, you're asking like, where's the threshold here, right? And I think you can scale that in either direction, right? Like you can scale it all the way down to the point of the individual, where at the end of the day, the answer is just I don't know, but I like it. All the way up to you require a some sort of controlled study across a large population to be able to determine the merit of whatever it is that you're talking about. And in a sense, I mean, how much that matters is probably down to the individual, but you really can't, like, you just can't make declarative statements at the end of the day. You know?
I think I kind of start taking issue with it when someone's giving not I don't know if, I mean, 'cause is it okay, is it okay to give purchase advice based on something that you've got subjective experience with, but that is objectively uncertain?
Yeah, I think because I mean at the end of the day, you could apply that same logic to I like the way this looks. This looks nice. You're making a judgment about the thing based on something that is totally subjective. Um, well, some might argue
But
that
the
even that's
thing
not
is, a lot of
subjective.
people do not acknowledge that it is totally subjective.
So you'd
Like,
have
it
to
is
just
very,
provide the right.
very common for
Yeah, you
people to
just
be
have to
like,
provide the right context, I think, for that and say, like, look, this is my experience and I feel it to be this way. You may not, but, um, because there isn't any evidence for this or whatever, right?
Mark D is denying being an epistemological anarchist, but I'm not sure yet.
Take it to
So
Discord, Mark D.
Kenny's saying as long as there is a mutual understanding. I think perhaps that's the big issue, is that a lot of the time, particularly on the internet, there is not a mutual understanding, which is why it's
Well,
equally annoying when someone jumps into a conversation saying like, no, ignore that person's advice. You shouldn't buy, a different headphone. You should just get a new cable and that'll make your current headphone sound way better. But it's also equally annoying when two people are just having a conversation and someone goes, where's your blind test? It's like, yeah, I don't know what the right answer is.
Well,
I think maybe it is
I
down to
mean,
the individual.
the
what
fun
we're
thing
talking
about
about
that
here,
is with the cable thing specifically is that there are situations, particularly with certain IEMs, where like there may actually be a there, and the person who
Yeah.
is doing the whole like where's your blind test has to eat crow, and they never do.
well, no, I mean, like that's something that since at least the Northwest AV Guy blogs, that has been the common thing of, unless you have an extremely low impedance thing or a multi-BA IEM, 8 cables won't make a difference. It's just like,
There are.
that's a very niche use case, and it's very niche for a cable, particularly an IEM cable, to be that high Z. But I think that generally the thing we're trying to discuss here is what's the threshold for fire in a crowded theater, right? Like, everyone agrees that there's some threshold where making a statement is a social harm, right? That's the fire in a crowded theater line. The question is how wrong and how much of an impact does it have to have before it's bad and we should stop it, and what's the method we should use to stop it, right? Like, unless you're an absolutist of, you can literally say, well, you can shout fire in a crowded theater, there's some line where you're like, we should stop this. The question is where. Some of us are in the people should be penalized for making misleading statements stance. Some of us are not.
I don't know. I kind of see it as another when you're in a glass house, don't throw stones moment. Because like most of the things we say are not backed up by blind tests. Like,
Yeah.
we're
In an
Blaine
ideal
thinks
world,
we should be punished.
Yes, I do actually.
no. No, that's what
Well,
Blaine
okay,
wants.
but
But
it's like
no, but
the-
I'm saying there's less of a there's more of an equivalency between us and the people, making claims that cables make a difference than we might want to admit, just because
Because a lot of it's conjecture.
we are we are just speaking to our experiences at the end of the day, and we might have some
We're
logarithmic
not just
plots
doing
to
that, though.
show
We
some
are-
sort of
I don't think that's
evidentiary
true.
basis for that. But
Yeah,
no,
so
Chad
we're
is
measuring
proposing
shit.
that executions is the solution, and I believe
no.
that Chad is correct.
Cable
Blaine is
folks
always going to
are-
advocate
are-
for executions, but
Cable folks are denying
I'm
measurements and evidence
just saying
entirely. We're not.
where I draw the line. It doesn't really matter to me the evidentiary basis behind what someone is saying, as long as they are being polite and not prescribing anything for anyone else.
I
But
think
often
that's
they
a good
are.
way
Well,
to put
yeah,
it.
but that's a
often they
problem.
are.
Like,
Yeah.
that's why a lot of the discussion in the hobby kind of sucks, but a lot of it doesn't.
A lot of people, though, also have, I think, an unreasonably high expectation of what is likely to get a certain answer. Because, like, we have to understand, the reason the Harman research exists, I think I mentioned this in the video as well, is answering the question of how do I make a headphone that sounds good to as many people as possible is a really valuable question to answer. So there's a big financial incentive to do it because you can make products that'll make you back more money than it costs to do the research. But you can't, it's not reasonable for anyone to expect someone to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars or whatever to do an extensive study looking at, does a 2 kilohertz dip make soundstage bigger? That's something which, like, there's not a study into. We're not going to get a clear answer that says, yes, not only is this like a clear thing, but that's the specific subjective effect. And so a lot of the time you see people saying, like, where's the evidence for this? Or I'm not going to talk about it unless there is, there's no, I'm not going to talk about it unless there's proof. But it's unlikely that we're going to get proof for a certain thing, which is a shame, and I wish that wasn't the case. But I also think that it doesn't mean that we shouldn't talk. It's a forbidden subject to talk about.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, there's sort of
at
a
certain
question,
point-
though. I mean, you there are delineating what is hypothesis from what is theory, right? Like, you're saying this is something that I don't have evidence for. This is something I won't have evidence for. Here is a conjecture about how a mechanism might work.
Yeah.
And that's a much lower level of, shall we say, information confidence than the majority of people talking about these things.
Mhm.
And
The
people
other risk
should
is-
face
Yeah.
people should face some at least social consequence for being loudly overconfident about these
Shame.
things. Literally.
The unfortunate side of this is like anybody who is actually reporting, X about a headphone or a product or whatever, is going to have more purchase within the audience if they are confident about it. And so I recently did that video on the AirPods Max, right? And in my testing, I kept coming back to this, like, I don't know what's going on here. And I realized, like, that people don't want that. They want it is
Yeah.
this way or it's not this way. And
Well,
my
that's why
testing
people
was
like single lines and
yeah, I
absolute
know.
numbers.
They want the simple answer, but there is no simple answer with that headphone. Like I filmed that video twice. I filmed it once in my studio, and then also I was like, I'm not going to use that. But in that one, I mentioned, like, well, the truth about the AirPods Max is that everybody's been wrong about it, and everybody will continue to be wrong about it, and that's the end of the story, right? Because it's like there's nothing conclusive that I can find here that actually indicates one or the other, the answer that people want. And in a way, I think it would be great if this is me. I mean, this is wishful thinking. It'd be great if we could just be content with, I don't know. But we're
I
not.
think humans naturally are never going to be content with that. We
Yeah.
have to know things. We have to learn
Yeah.
things. I think the other risk actually is that people see something which appears scientific or objective, however you may want to describe that on the surface, and don't necessarily understand what the problems might be. Blaine, I'm sure you're familiar with the a study of analog interconnects and cables by Melinda and Kuncha.
On the show before.
So it's okay. So it's an
I
example
mean,
of this where
at some point,
people
Cameron,
say,
this
"Where's
is
the
just
evidence?"
like, this is a footnote, but we really need to do just a video that specifically indicts, not just as a body of work, but also as a scientist and probably as a person, specifically Country.
Wow. Didn't
Um,
Amir do a video on that? I think he
Amir
did.
did a
Yes,
video
but
on
we
that
should
paper. It's
do.
quite good. I would
Yeah.
actually recommend that people go and watch Amir's video on that. It goes through a lot of the issues. But yeah, so this is a paper which basically shows, look,
One
here's
of
some
a
measured
corpus of
different-
work by Country.
Yes, and it's fair to say that Kuncha is a fairly controversial figure. But this paper in particular, it's the one that was referenced in like Passion for Sound and Jay-Z Yagi's videos and stuff. Because the paper says,
It's been
like, look,
referenced a
here's
lot by a
clear-
lot of folks.
Yes, because it tells people here's like clear, measurable proof.
Here's
that
exactly
cables
what
make
you
a
want to
difference.
hear.
Yes, here's exactly what you want to hear with data to back it up. And so a lot of people go, this is great. This is the proof I've been looking for. But the problem is that it's not as conclusive as people think. And it's a good example of how there can be, I think, a social harm from something being presented and understood by many people as being scientific when it's really not.
Yes.
I mean,
scientific seeming explanations presented with authority go very
The
far in
authority
this
game,
space,
yes.
unfortunately.
Yes,
And
but we see
that's,
that on
you
a
know,
much more like
We do.
surface level as well all the time. Like people who aren't even bothering to go that far. I think you have to do some work to actually find the Kuncher work. Whereas, for a lot of people just searching
Well,
whatever
passion for
headphone.
sound has made it more visible. Also, someone in chat suggested we
Really?
have people on to argue face to face.
What's that?
I mean,
Eh?
I think the thing is that a lot of the interactions and arguments that happen in the audio community, unfortunately, are or end up less friendly, and so a lot of people assume that that's going to be the case. Whereas, here, I think that wouldn't be how it goes. Like, Blaine, you and I disagree on a lot, right?
This is the worst take in chat that I've ever seen. To me, 44.1 kilohertz versus 96 kilohertz and above is like going from 60 hertz monitor to 144 hertz monitor. What the fuck are you talking about?
Well, objectively, that's just
Andy,
wrong.
are you
144 is a higher ratio to 60.
No, but that is so much more.
I mean, as someone
obvious.
who does prefer to use high performance oversampling and high res stuff, hard to disagree with the level of difference being assumed.
not
there. But that being said, Dandy, are you using a non-oversampling DAC? Because there are certain situations like that where that change in sample rate is going to make a way bigger difference than it would on most things. So it kind of depends. But yeah,
yes,
I mean, like,
you're
the
using a bad product.
That is like the spiciest take that I've seen in a very long time.
But like, with the argument thing, though, it's like, Blaine, you and I disagree on quite a lot, right? But
Yeah.
I know that you and I can always have a conversation about something, and it's never a hostile argument. It's a constructive debate. And there's been various times where one of us has come out with our mind change because we've actually, discussed things and brought forth evidence and whatever. Whereas a lot of the time, it's just an argument trying to be right.
Like, epistemologically, you are actually concerned with the concept of evidence, though. And I'm not sure that applies to a lot of the other people who have had similar subjective perceptions to your own. Like, I believe in the principle of charity in debates, of assuming that they are and operating on that assumption, but I would not be surprised if Lachlan and I were not able to have a satisfactory reconciliation. And I would still be very eager to have a disagreement with him.
I'll message Lachlan and say that it would be great to have him on, because it would be a really interesting debate to have. I don't know if he'll want to, which some degree is fair enough. But
to be clear, we would not pull punches.
I would also be happy to go on Lachlan's podcast. I'm fine with being 1v whatever. Fight me IRL.
Yeah, but I mean, in a constructive, in a genuinely scientific discussion, though, you wouldn't expect people to pull punches. Like, a lot of the, academia generally is often described as quite a hostile environment, and it's not necessarily like the whole reason. And I used this exact description in the video coming out tomorrow. But like, the whole reason that the peer review process exists isn't because there's a group of peers going, "I'm going to find a way to make sure that paper doesn't get out." That's not the point. The point is to try and find issues, point them out so that they can be rectified, and so that the conclusions are actually more useful to everyone.
But peer review is unfortunately not always that.
No, and that's true. But like, that's the hope. That's what it should be. But like, and generally speaking, it's not people going into it with the sole aim of trying to stop something from being released or trying to say that the person is wrong. It's
they're
trying to poke holes in something.
There is Sayer's law.
That's how things get made more helpful. Like, that's how scientific progress moves forward.
It's like doing a thesis defense. You're doing a thesis defense, and you have a committee there who can challenge you on what you're putting forward, and that's the whole point.
Yeah. 16 versus 24-bit is like upgraded. Okay.
So this is no engineering for
sorry.
noise.
This is legit for a sec. Okay.
Mark Super Review says framing it as fight me is not the best start. I mean, it is something where we are far enough apart where it has to be some sort of a conflict, right? Like, we have fundamental disagreements about truths.
I think it would be disingenuous to say that, it would be an argument where you've got all that much common ground to start on. It's going to be something where there is quite a lot of gap to cover or try to cover. But the point is that you're not going into it with any malicious intent, and I don't think he would either. It's just that you do have quite significant differences in opinion.
I think.
Okay. Blaine,
he wouldn't go into it.
Blaine, no offense. You come off very abrasive sometimes. But the thing is, I know that you're not doing it to be a dick. You're doing it because you would also expect that the other person that you're talking to is also not going to pull punches, because again, that's how things move forward, and that's why I enjoy talking to you, is because I know that there's no diplomacy involved in the discussion we're having. It's actually a just scientific discussion, which is really nice.
It could be a philosophical discussion.
I mean, I think it's disrespectful to people to diplomacy past what seem to be serious flaws in their reasoning, right? Like, that's just saying, I don't think that you deserve the respect of me saying this doesn't add up.
Yeah.
Like, if you're someone who's an adult and who I'm having a serious conversation with, I want to fully understand your thoughts, and if they seem incoherent to me, then you deserve the opportunity to address that.
Yeah, and I think that, coming back to what I said, is, considering all the evidence, and that in many cases can be whatever is brought up in a debate with someone. If you're unwilling to take any kind of criticism, you're not being scientific, to put it bluntly. You have to be open to external input, criticism, and being willing to maybe sometimes do a little bit more work to go the extra mile to defend whatever it is that you want to say. And
there's
if you do it, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. No, you should.
No, that's kind of the end of it.
The question of what being scientific means here, I think, is actually kind of an interesting one, though, because, and I didn't actually get a chance to flesh out my thought here, but I think that there's actually sort of a two-part thing that we don't always pay attention to. I started thinking about this a lot, I guess, I don't know, like 4 years ago, maybe. I started to be like, oh, what's the commonality between audio and economics? And the answer is, it's trying to quantify a very difficult to quantify area where people have a lot of strong emotions, and the data inputs are imprecise relative to the level of certainty we want. I think that it's a combination of not just like willingness to accept criticism, which is basically skepticism, right? Like, that's the sort of the articulation that you have here, is that science is skepticism. And I agree with that. But I think that there's sort of another dimension of it, which is that science is also, at least to me, about creating a testable model of how you think the world is, right? Saying, based on the information I have, this is the causal relationships that I think exist, and articulating them in a way that is subject to being falsified, right?
Because look at you building intentionality into your thought process for causal relationships.
Exactly. Well, but if you don't do that, then you can just sort of sit pretty in being unassailable, right? Like, if you don't make any claims about how things are actually connected and how things work, you never need to worry about anyone disputing you successfully, because all you've done is make a number of completely unconnectable statements, right? Like, you've just created a mire.
You would assume that the outcomes of such a process would be fairly, like, there'd be sort of like a common sense behind it, or like a fairly like straightforward recognition of where the flaws are, I suppose, in a person's worldview. I've met people for whom epistemology is not relevant to the way that they orient themselves in the world. So, like,
man, I'm fucking shocked.
No, like, I've met people who have thought deeply about this, and for them it is just aesthetics. That's it. And
to be clear, I want to say this, that's based.
It is. And like, when I was having these debates with, because I had this, back in the before times for me, like, I had these sorts of debates with people all the time, because I tended to think that for most people, like, you just approach the world from an epistemological perspective. You and access to information and how you get that, like, that's all kind of how people approach things. And I realized, like, that for some people, like, there is actually a deep consideration for just vibes, and it's like, that's it. And when you actually, like, I don't know, when I was talking to this person, this is actually a very, very smart person who went very far down this, like, actually, humans are not these, epistemology machines. We're actually, much more compelled by aesthetics of things. What falls away when you take that position is the prospect of being wrong, and I think that's core to any sort of scientific outlook on any of this stuff. Right, where basically you just say, well, it doesn't matter whether I'm right or whether I'm wrong about this. It doesn't matter if this is true. It doesn't matter what the facts are. This is just how I feel about it, and that's it.
I mean, a lot of the time, it's not even necessarily that people are saying, no, this is just how I feel about it. I don't really care about it. Whatever evidence you want to try and put before me, I'm not willing to be convinced. It's that people may not even realize how much what they are sort of effectively wanting to believe is influencing the way in which they're going about things. It's like even, people who are career scientists end up like, what were the two Pons and Fleischmann, the
Mhm.
two in
Yes.
Utah that ended up with the or cold fusion. Basically, they sort of claimed that they had a cold fusion recipe, and it went really far. They did massive presentations at like national chemistry and physics conventions and stuff, and they I think got like a couple million in funding. It wasn't like a internet argument. It was a sort of pretty serious thing, but so much of it, and it never turned out to be anything. It turned out to be completely wrong because seemingly their kind of overwhelming desire for this to be true, be it because they just wanted that to be true or because they wanted the recognition if it would end up being true or whatever, meant that, they didn't do the methodology properly and they didn't actually end up producing the thing that they wanted to produce. If you want something to be true, even if you think you're being scientific about something, a lot of the time you can end up either ignoring data or leaving gaps in your methodology that actually shouldn't be there because it might help you stumble upon the conclusion that you were originally looking for.
I mean, Richard Feynman called this cargo cult science, right? It
Mhm.
has the appearance of science, but as he put it, the planes don't land because it isn't science. The cargo
Uh-huh.
cult builds the landing strip, but the proof is in the pudding. The planes aren't landing and there's no cargo. And with cargo cult science, we have the appearance of science. We have a lot of the methodology of science, but we don't actually get the result we want. And it's very easy to fall into that. Like
I can think
once you
of a lot
become
of that,
strongly
yeah.
motivated by your results, it's very, very easy.
I think
Yeah.
the flip side to that though is just saying, well, you want it to be true, so you must be wrong, even if you do have quite overwhelming evidence,
Mm.
is not scientific. And a lot of people end up falling in that because they don't want it to be true, so they're not looking at the evidence that's being presented. When actually,
Yeah, well, I mean,
whilst
that's
saying
why
you
everyone
are
needs to look at the actual evidence and
yes,
methodology. That's the
exactly. And I
fundamental
think
thing.
the sort of ironic issue is that sometimes you end up with potentially two sides doing it, where one person is potentially not doing the methodology entirely right because they want this thing to be true. The other side saying, I'm not even going to look at or trust any of your evidence whatsoever because I don't want it to be true, basically, whether they're saying that directly or not. Yeah.
People are
I think
motivated reasoning is the bane of actually finding the truth as a general rule. A political commentator that I read once, and I promise that I won't cite political commentators much on this, said something to the effect of the most objectively correct Twitter account ever is like, here's an assessment of the election in such and such place. Here's some statistical analysis of a paper about this. I will never acknowledge the independence of northern Lithuania. Then right back to the, they have one topic that they're obviously a zealot about, but it's so niche that it doesn't touch all the stuff you read from them. So you just find someone who's frothy about something you don't care about and read them on everything else.
Rob Hawk asks, do headphone disagreements ever end in violence? Well, we
Yes.
had one manufacturer threaten to send anthrax to a reviewer because they didn't like their headphones. People have been banned from CanJam and stuff. So, unfortunately, yes, some people take things way too personally and are willing to go way too far to defend whatever views they may have about headphones. It's a weird hobby sometimes, this, and almost everyone thinks that they're doing things the right way. And as a result, I don't know if things will ever...
Nominal asks,
I
how
don't know
would
if
they
even
even get
be
anthrax?
is...
For those looking to acquire anthrax on their own,
Nope.
it actually
Nope.
naturally could.
Nope, not doing
Yeah,
that.
we're gonna move on.
Not doing that.
What gear have you changed your mind about over time and why?
Yeah, I think-
E.g., something that you've fallen out of love with, something that you've come to appreciate more with time.
Just to be clear, we are all good to move on, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
We could
I don't
probably
know.
go
I
on the
think
last
that
topic.
I'm not
for
sure
literally
that
4
we've
more hours,
actually
so.
answered what it means to be objective as such. Like, I think that that's we talked a lot about science, but what is objectivity here, right? Like, is science objectivity? Like, is the term useful for us? Because like that's at least for
Doesn't make
Cameron
you-
and I mean for Andrew it was just flogging the epistemology horse.
Always.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah.
think that's kind of where I fit. It's it's about whether you are actually taking the approach of considering all available evidence, regardless of how it might align with what you currently believe. That being both the willingness to be wrong if something does not necessarily show for certain, because that can't always be the case, but even just the willingness to say maybe that's right, because there's more evidence coming to light that seems to be the case. But it also means that if you have to understand that if you don't have evidence for something, or that if the evidence is contradicting what you currently believe, you may need to change your opinion. Being
Some would argue
unwilling
that it's impossible to be certain.
Well, yes, like it's pretty hard to be certain about a lot of things, and that is a bit of a limitation in and of itself. But I think the point is that if you
No,
are
but some would say
unwilling to
that
consider
certainty
evidence,
doesn't exist.
Nope. I see what you're trying to do.
probability driven.
Well,
Okay, people
yeah.
are saying we should move on.
Well, I would
That's
disagree
fair.
with that. I would say that that's just not a correct.
Moving on would be
interpretation of what it
great,
means to know
they
anything.
I think that
I
is a
just
good
think we
definition of
should move on.
objective,
Thanks,
though.
Owen.
Like the concept of being
Yeah.
able to take information independent of what you would like it to say.
Mine is more just being an externalist.
Anyways, what gear have you guys changed your mind on, and why?
I've got
Oh, we have a super chat. Can you get ZMF Zach on? If Zach would like to come on, I'm sure we would all love to have him on.
We have had him on in the past. I don't think he'd be too keen to do it these days, but yeah.
Well, I mean,
if he wants
here's
to.
like, yeah, my statement would be I would certainly be interested in talking to him.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
hey,
let's.
did you guys ever hear about the audiophile carrot that was mint? No, it wasn't. It was a carrot.
True.
What?
Also, Julian Krauss is the best.
Yes.
Love that guy.
Shout out to Julian Krauss.
I would love to
My
have him
favorite
on.
German.
Yes, I was thinking about that literally yesterday. We should have.
I mean,
Julian Krauss on.
I mean, like, here's the thing. What would we do with Julian Krauss? Like, he's great, but like,
More carrots.
yeah, I mean, I feel like with him, we just want him on because we like him, as opposed to because we
I
have
just
an
want an
idea that would be
opportunity to
It's the only reason I
beneficial.
have you guys on, to be fair. I mean,
Yeah, and look what happens there.
this is a good point.
Okay.
All right, let's move on. Griffin, what's our next?
What gear have you changed your mind on, and why?
I'm curious from you guys.
Speakers are or can indeed be better than headphones. That was not something which I used to think was the case. I used to think that actually there was a lot of reasons as to why headphones were in many ways objectively superior to speakers. And I still think that for a lot of reasons that is the truth, and that I would almost go as far as to say most practical scenarios, I still think that that's the case. But I also now think that actually properly, like, good speakers in a good environment exceed what you can get with headphones.
Yeah, I mean, the question is ultimately, like, you can point to a bunch of individual bits of why this might be better in this or that respect, but holistically, the question is, what do you have more fun with? And if you've had a better experience with speakers, and I think that that's probably going to be the case for the majority of people, if not everyone.
Can I get a double-blind controlled study on fun?
On fun.
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically,
I don't know.
well, it wasn't double
You seem like the
blind,
kind
but
of
that's
person
what a
that
lot of
wouldn't
the
be willing
Harman
to
stuff
consider
is.
any evidence related to what is fun.
I mean, the Harman stuff is basically about fun, is the funny thing. Like, that's, to some degree, that's actually like one of my issues with it, is that Sean kind of took the easy way out and just being like hedonist in his research rather than going for a more difficult to verify program. But it is basically just about fun.
Okay.
DMS and I want to get matching tattoos with Sean at CanJam New York.
That would be very funny. I would
I
want
took
to
it
take
one
video
step.
of that.
Yeah, I took it one step further and said we should all get matching tattoos of Sean.
Of Sean.
It would
And then
be
BMS took it one step further and said we should get tramp stamps of Sean.
it would be a
Okay.
power move to have a tattoo of yourself.
It would be. Oh, but doesn't is it Constantine who has his HRTF?
Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
If
Constantine
Gotta
is
do it.
awesome.
Mhm.
Okay. Gear you've changed your mind on. And this one might be a little. The time I changed my mind on it was a while ago. So people might not know the part of me that was way more aggressive about this headphone's superiority to all other headphones. But I've gotten a lot.
Wait, you don't like it now, or you do like it now?
It's not that I don't like it. It's that I used to be, this is the best headphone in the
A cultist.
world. Yeah, no, absolutely a cultist. And I used to, regardless of what someone was looking for, I would send them to this, which is a terrible idea. For some people, this headphone is just going to be terrible, and we kind of need to accept that.
Somewhere
I-
Douglas is crying.
I mean, nah, he understands. Like,
Yeah.
I think the amount
No,
of
I agree. The
love they get
HD600 is better.
is earned, but I absolutely changed my mind on how good they are basically as soon as I started taking EQ seriously,
Mm-hmm.
because they still
And-
have problems, and whatever problems I have on my head seem to be the least dramatic of the problems people experience with this headphone.
Well, and I was going to say, what people might not realize is that I believe, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but you are also, your part of your criticism has to do with it actually having too much trouble in the
That's
10
what I
kilohertz
mean by
band.
it being something that affects me way less than
Yeah.
it affects most people. Now, there are a few people who make a similar complaint, and
No, but I've noticed
the
it as well.
on-head
You
the
can hear
on-head
it.
measurements do kind of corroborate
Yeah.
that. But I think what's much more common is that people are getting a pretty big dip in the treble on their heads, which is also visible in the data. And that, plus the fact that it has, fairly considerably warm mid-range, does kind of make it a soupy, stodgy, muffled boy. And
For some people.
yeah.
Yeah.
I would say that for many people it is likely to be too dark, and that's just
And
kind of the way it is. And I would say that's the truth about the HD600 too. And I think as
Less
much as
dark,
we've wanted, yeah, for sure. But I think as much as we've wanted to kind of believe that the narrative of the Sennheiser Veil was just that, people are used to Grados and Bayer dynamics and whatever. And yeah, that might be true to an extent. I think it's important to note that that was a very popular narrative, likely because people actually did hear it that way.
Wow. I like this take from you a lot.
Yeah. Now you change your opinion on the DT770.
No, my opinion on the DT770 is basically it's the same as what you kind of have described here. It's that I have to recognize that even though I find it sibilant, there are people for whom it's going to be actually pretty solid for. It's like, and that's why I have that sort of take on it, that like it's actually not as bad as it may sound to some of us. And same with the DT990 to a certain extent. We know from that data, the on-head data. Get out of here.
To be clear though, I'm not necessarily just talking about how it's going to be for other people. Like my actual take on the sound of this headphone on
for
my
yourself
own
as well.
head
Yeah.
did get worse over time as I started to notice issues. Like again, I just kind of started as a cultist who would just kind of, not completely uncritically, but mostly uncritically, just take the word of the community, and just that what they were saying became my experience. But over time, and with criticizing these things more intently, you start to notice issues. And the first issue I really noticed was the kind of treble peak I complain about. But as time went on, I noticed that, yeah, the bass is a little bit fluffy. There is
Mhm.
that dip in the treble at around like 7-8 kilohertz is there on my head.
Mhm.
And yeah, kind of fixing that's relation to everything else does make it sound better.
Now it's
Um,
still better than everything at its price point, though.
yeah, the mid range is still cracked for what
Yeah.
it is, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's not perfect, and it's not a headphone I would ever pick up to use, really.
I
Like,
like that for you this was a revelation after you like really went hard into EQ, and also I imagine this had something to do with the recognition of the DFHRTF of the KB5000 and some of that. You know,
so
where you're
no, I had
looking.
had the opinion before
Oh, did you? Okay.
we had that data. When that data came out, I was fucking vindicated. I was so happy.
Oh, we're talking about the 6XX for folks who
yeah, the
didn't see that.
HD650. Yeah,
Yeah,
I want
that's
them to sound
interesting.
like that in the mid-range R0.
Yeah.
You know, the part that's good.
Yeah. I just love that it's the opposite of the, you know, like a lot of the criticism that you see of it is that, oh, it lacks, you know, treble, but
And it does.
really
It does.
yeah, well, it's just not treble boosted, but then
No,
it
it's
does.
veiled.
Well, no, it
has,
has a
but it
precipitous
has
dip. Yeah.
it has it, sure, but then the issue is that it has too much treble in a different band.
Well, for me,
For you,
that was
yeah.
the first issue I noticed. Yes, but it's easier to notice peaks than dips.
Yeah. For me,
Well,
on the
they're that
6XX
big.
650, I get a 5 kilohertz thing. I don't get so much of the 7 kilohertz issue.
I get a little bit of the 5
or the 10
kilohertz thing too.
Yeah.
Less of an issue than the 7K dip or the 11K peak, though.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's one, like which one I have changed my mind on. It may have been the HD 800.
Because you thought it was good and now you think it's terrible.
Terrible's the wrong word. I think it's good for the reasons you think it's good, Griffin. But I have a hard time listening to it now without EQ. I have one.
I mean, I have a hard time listening to it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I'm sure there's lots that I've changed my mind on.
a more recent one I've changed my mind on is actually this, which we'll get into, the FT1 Pro.
You liked it before, but now you don't, or you don't like it,
We'll
or you
get
didn't like
into
it,
that.
now you do. Okay.
We'll get into
I
that.
want to hear that one again, because the one that I heard at Warsaw did not sound like, not even like, oh, it's a bit different. It did not sound anything like the measurements I've seen.
Sometimes that happens at shows. I've noticed.
I disagree with the measurements a fair bit too, but it might be a way people don't expect.
Okay. What about you,
I'm
Blaine?
trying to think of what else that I've changed my mind on. Probably, I've changed my mind on like amps and DACs because I wasn't doing the blind testing,
True.
so I've definitely been wrong about that. I wasn't doing level match. Well, I was level matching by eye, not by not actually using an ABX.
Yeah, the problem I'm having with this question is that I feel like in most cases I start to like things less and less over time. Like I've
that always
scarcely
happens.
met a headphone and then like not liked it at all, and then I like it a ton later down the line. Like
That would be very weird.
Yeah, I can't really think of a scenario where that's ever happened.
I mean, I can think of a headphone that I like more. Like my first impression of it was quite negative, and now I'm sort of grudgingly respectful to it. That's the HD600.
Fair.
The HD600 to me sounded like everything that was, well, almost everything that was wrong with the HD800, but without any of the things I liked. I found the treble to be uneven. I found it to be veiled and warm and muddy, and I didn't find it to be really a good accounting of my music.
Sorry, Pigman says now Blaine likes Immanis.
Yes, sure. But no, after a while, hearing a lot of other bad headphones and coming to sort of cope with veiled stuff, I think that it's a good headphone, you know? Like, it's something where I went from, this is a headphone that I probably would not prefer to own, to this is a headphone that I could see, if it was ergonomic, using in the long term. It isn't, sadly, very ergonomic to me, but...
Clampy boys.
Yeah.
That's
I
one thing
think
I've
I
not
also
changed
had.
my mind on is manufacturers need to make headphones for people with massive heads.
Yes.
There's so
And
many
actually for
headphones
people
that
with
if
small
they do
heads.
fit, they barely fit or slightly
Yeah.
uncomfortably fit, which is really annoying. I do have an unusually large head, but it is quite annoying that there's actually a lot of headphones where even if they may have otherwise sounded good, they either like I can't get a seal or they're not comfortable or whatever, just because the max adjustment isn't quite enough.
So I actually have somewhat of a nuanced position on the whole, like having changed my mind about something, because I can think of lots of headphones where that's the case. But what I realize is that the things that I was identifying as good stayed the same, and I just now understand that I was like uniquely indexing for that and ignoring the flaws that existed in other bands. And specifically for me, it would have been though basically like how well something does from like 6K and above, or sometimes even like 8K and above, because for the longest time I was, and this is actually like it's Bayer trauma, right? um I was it's not Bayer
I
trauma,
think
it's
that's
Bayer
called
trauma.
tinnitus, isn't it?
So I was so focused on the basically the issues at around 8 kilohertz, because I had reviewed a bunch of Bayer dynamic headphones that had these crazy peaks right at around 8.8 kilohertz, 8.5 kilohertz, like the DT1990 and stuff like that, right? And then also has issues at 12 kilohertz, whatever, right? And that had led me to index so much on smoothness for that range, right? Not having 8 or peaks in that range, not having massive imbalances there. And this led me to um sort of like my attention wouldn't, when I was listening to these products, would go there first, right? That's like the disqualifier or the qualifier, and I would miss issues that would exist between 1 and 2 kilohertz, or issues that would exist, in with like the darkness around 5 kilohertz that a lot of the focals have, for example. And I think that's where, for me, I've certainly changed my mind on products, because I'm on second or third listen, or not second or third listen, but like coming acquainted with those headphones again after some time, is wow, actually the wideband, like listening more for wideband, I guess, reveals more of those issues. But I like for specific products, like, yeah, I mean, I can think of lots, like the LCD4, for example, the Final Audio D8000 Pro, um, to a large extent the LCD-X, the actually, I'm listing a lot of odysseys, but a lot of odysseys are really weird without EQ. Even headphones, I think, like the Sundara.
I thought that's what you were gonna say in response
Yeah,
to this
yeah.
question.
I mean,
Actually,
I still think the Sundara is a very good headphone. It's one of the better overall wideband. That's sort of the opposite, right? But I think that that's one where there are enough. This goes back a little bit to, the whole how confident can you be in the data thing, but there is a sense in which the data can also lead your sense of like lead your perception, where you're like, oh, this measures really well, therefore it must sound neutral, and you listen to a bunch of different recordings, and then when something doesn't sound great, you think maybe the recording is just bad, right? Stuff like that. Or the recording has an issue in one area or another. But yeah, I would say that the Sundara does have issues in the treble. So maybe that's my answer.
hell yeah.
Yeah. But I still think from a sound profile perspective, like overall, it's pretty good.
I think a general trend for me, like when I was sort of earlier into things, is I was more willing, or not even willing, but I was more likely to like a headphone or speak about it positively if it had something that was impressive, even if there was other flaws. Whereas nowadays, I'm much more on sort of the wanting more of a balance thing, not wanting the party tricks as much, or I don't know, seeing past them faster, I guess.
Yeah, it's going from wanting novelty to wanting a good experience.
I think the
It's like
Utopia
I
was like
still,
that for me.
I still like
You
some of those
know?
headphones. I still use 1266 now and then and stuff. But
Yeah.
at the same time, the drawbacks of it are
Mhm.
more bothersome to me than they were previously.
And it
for other
also
headphones, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
it scales the like ranking of overall sort of internal preferences down for everything once you have those few that are like actually doing the thing that you're really into.
Yeah.
It kind of makes everything kind of like go down a bunch. So even things that you may have been, like loved in the past for whatever quality, it's now hard to kind of get back into that novelty mode.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Actually, I think I have one other one that I changed my mind, or at least that I'm in the process of changing my mind on. I've usually been pretty aggressively positive on how Meze stuff is built. And I still appreciate Antonio's mechanical design, but as time has gone by, I've sort of become like, I don't know, less impressed with it.
Like the Empyrean stuff.
Yeah. I mean, like,
You think
obviously the
that for a
fit and
minute,
finish
and then
is
you
very
pick up a
good.
Theo FT1 Pro.
I was
for
gonna
a-
say, like,
you go, actually,
Big
maybe that
raise.
was pretty good.
I mean, yeah, like, again, the fit and finish is good. But I feel like I don't love the kinematics. I don't know. I don't like how they sort of move in my hands and fit on my head as much as I could. I feel like I sort of got waylaid on the everything sort of moves together nicely and it doesn't rattle or click or anything, but then kind of ignored the fact that it's still not necessarily that great in terms of where the center of gravity is, how it actually, fits on my head.
They're a bit. I don't know. Like,
Swingy.
yeah,
Yeah,
swingy is a
floppy.
good.
Yeah.
The lyric too. Also the pads are too small, or the lyric platform
Yeah.
in general. It's just too small of a thing. But I will say that's like the only company that makes like nice looking or nice feeling, high quality. Like I'm struggling to think of other
I would say
Even-
Sennheiser is another that
like
They
the
generally
HD800.
feel nice.
But
I would argue that Sennheiser, Austrian, the composer, is also
okay.
nice feeling.
The composer is nice feeling, but I don't think it's made of nearly as nice materials as the Meze stuff is.
Okay,
The
like
ahead.
what makes it nice?
well,
Like it feels strong, light. It's like
Sony makes some good feeling headphones too.
Sony's are quite good in this respect.
yeah.
Um,
I'm just,
I don't know, like the
DCA.
I'm thinking with the Austrian ones, it was the headband that didn't quite feel as like the something about it just didn't feel quite on the same level. DCA makes very sturdy feeling stuff.
I wish their headband was softer though.
Yeah.
That's the big.
Yeah, I don't know why.
Why is it so stiff? Like if they just changed that, it
well,
would be way.
Here's the weird thing. That's a development. Like the original Mad Dog strap was super soft and it was really nice. So like
Speaking of
Dan
the
had
FT1
an ergonomic strap and then moved to an unergonomic one.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, a little bit of a tangent. Someone, Yakucho, mentioned that the FT1 Pro THD performance is terrible and apparently like causes issue in the bass. I'm just looking at the measurements now.
No,
it
is. So terrible is the wrong word. Terrible is false. It has an excursion limit.
Oh, well, I mean, at 94 dB, it's still got like 2%.
Yeah, but who
That's
is
still quite a
looking
lot.
for?
Oh,
Yeah, like who?
I don't know.
People who are if you're testing
does
for
not
excursion limits,
matter
you're
at all.
usually pushing it to like
Well,
110 dB.
okay, no, but if he's hearing it, because this is the thing with planers, right? Particularly with ones like the FT1 Pro that almost assuredly have a leak, because of the little FS bump, is that once you get to the point where the diaphragm makes contact with the magnet array, you very rapidly get very audible distortion.
Oh yeah, no, a ton of high order stuff, and it's not at all the 2% or whatever that.
No, it's it goes from inaudible to immediately everybody will hear it.
Yeah.
At 104, it's nearly 10%, so that's going to be audible. But
well, and the thing that's really worrisome, if you look at that measurement, and we really need to do distortion measurements better. There's so much noise there, but you can see that there's a lot of higher order products around 20 to 30 hertz. Like that's not how that should look, know. And then by 110, you're seeing. I mean, that presumably buzzed.
It buzzes, yeah.
Yeah, so,
I
like,
should
I
have
get
noted
that
that actually.
totally.
That like it's the thing is, when I was actually doing the distortion like sweeps, I didn't notice it. Like I guess I just wasn't paying attention to it. But then afterwards, I noticed that there was like the typical sort of excursion limiting buzz thing. So I got to update that post to indicate that
Yeah,
there is an excursion limit.
and I mean, that's gonna happen with everything, but it's not surprising to me given how the acoustics of that headphone work. Like, it's a trade-off. It's inherent to the design choices one makes, but I can see that as being a real problem.
Yeah.
So I think that's a rare case where I'm not going to put someone #on blast for distortion complaints. Let's see what else. Do we have? I mean, surely we must have more. I mean, like we've been in this for quite a while. Like, are there not headphones where you guys have been
I think
initially like, oh, this is really impressively put together, or I love how this looks, and then you're like,
well, usually it's for me, it's the Odysseys, right?
For
And it's
me,
the same
it was
thing
most of
that you
Focal's
mentioned.
closed back headphones.
But you liked them initially?
I did, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's tricky because part of this is like, you know, things where your opinion is just sort of slowly/slightly changed. Your approach is slightly changed over time, and that's, I don't think, what the question is asking. I think it's asking like, what are some things where, like, you know, you've done a 180, like HD6XX is the best headphone in the world. Actually, no, it's not. Or headphones are better, speakers.
Well,
better,
you were a cultist and then now you're not, or you were a not and now you're a cultist.
Excommunicado.
I struggle with it. Like,
I don't know that there are many
no
cases
headphones
like
that I am a cultist about today. It doesn't exist. Like I like this Sesvara. I can find all kinds of flaws with it. You know,
Sesvara is a headphone which I've like. I think it's not that my opinion's changed about it. I mean, it's still here, but
the closest thing that I might be a cultist to is this.
I sent to Mr. Jarman about that actually. Because I think Sesvara over time, my opinion's gotten less positive on it. Mostly in some of the treble stuff, but I still like it a lot. It's just that my opinion is no longer like, no, this is I used to be more almost to the point that this is definitively the best headphone, whereas I no longer think that.
Yeah.
Also, I now think that Sesvara is too bass light, but
well, yeah, I mean that's the thing. If you're not like, it is, I mean, it's folks should be adding bass shelves and reducing 4.3 kilohertz with that headphone, probably.
So this probably isn't like a product thing, but I'm kind of coming around to like the take that maybe bass shelves are pretty overhyped.
Bass shelves or
Bless.
bass rise? Because actually, what I do these days is not a bass shelf. I do a 20 hertz boost with a Q of 0.6. And what this does is,
I feel like that's just lead compensation on that at that point. Like,
but depends how much you boosted by, because what this does,
yeah,
and
I guess
you should try it. This,
I mean, I used to do something similar.
Yeah, I mean, you can put however precise you want to be with equalizer APO, right? But I'm just talking about with the PCUI, it does this pretty good. But yeah, this effectively gives you the gradual bass rise all the way into the sub bass, and to me, that sounds better than a shelf.
Yeah, I mean, I've just had a pretty decent string of being annoyed by headphones that have a bass shelf, and then like getting a comparable, you know, difference of bass and treble via other means just feels legitimately better to me in a lot of cases. It feels like sort of disjointed when there's a fairly high
that's because
Q
you're
rise.
a bass split, and for people who like bass,
yeah,
they do want the bass boost.
I mean,
like,
maybe,
but what you're saying is like the clear is the, you know, or something like that gives you a comparable, you know, bass and treble, even though it doesn't have a bass shelf, and that might be a better approach to doing. And I don't think there's anything wrong
better
with that.
treble and better build and comfort. I think it would be an extremely good
I think
headphone.
I think that's a reasonable take, but for the people who are, you know, they like tons of bass, doesn't matter that the bass and treble is going to be proportional, they're still going to want a bass boost of some kind.
Also, we've got good takes in chat. PCUI should be deleted from the internet. Good take.
Yes. PCUI is trash.
I mean, I completely agree it's trash, but
And yet you keep using it. Curious.
I call it the technicalities shredder.
Can you not like
No, you can use
just
use
Rune as a
equalizer.
company expense or something?
Rune is better. Yeah, I used to use Rune, but I should probably just go back to that. I used to use Rune.
Rune's EQ UI is
expensive.
really nice.
But also you can just use equalizer APO, right? Like you can just put you don't need the piece UI.
Yeah, you don't need the piece. I don't personally understand why people add the PCUI thing onto it. I think that UI is worse than
the reason they added is because for a very long time EQ APO had functionally no UI at all. Like it's just inertia.
Right.
Yeah, youngin. You don't remember, but back when you were 13, EQ APO was.
Yeah, well, I wasn't really in the hobby like that. Yeah, I mean, it's a similar thing happens. Like people say, like, "Oh, FL Studio is not a real DAW." It's like, well, it didn't used to be, but now it's arguably better than most.
Okay, Zoomer.
Anyway, why Rune is so damn expensive? Because when you have an extremely niche product with a lot of pretty expensive software devs and a lot of expensive company operations, unfortunately, it just kind of works out. Like, I can't remember when if you just look at the number of employees that Rune has and then the number of like users that they say they have, it's almost a miracle at the price they're charging that they're still in business. Wow. Like just on salaries and stuff, it's genuinely impressive that the company is profitable.
Interesting.
It's expensive because we're very niche. That's basically it.
Rune does get, and honestly, of all of the Hi-Fi Store upsells I've ever got, Rune is the one that I have the least complaints about. Every audio like Hi-Fi Store I've ever been has really upsold Rune, but like honestly, I'd rather that than like
cables.
I can't even think of like whatever snake oil else was there.
Replace your wall outlets with some big pure gold ones.
Yeah, as far as products go, Rune does actually have the highest chance of improving your enjoyment of listening to music.
It's good UX.
I've spoken
aren't
really
doing that in other means.
Rune a lot, and because like it's expensive. It's not that everyone should go out and buy it because, quite frankly, $12.50 or whatever it is a month for what it is a lot of money, and for a lot of people that's not worth it. It's better to put that to something else. But it is a really good product, and if it is within your price range, genuinely for a multitude of reasons, it just increases your listening enjoyment and makes a lot of things like EQ and stuff a hell of a lot easier.
Yeah. Cool. Shall we move on?
News and impressions.
No, there's one more.
One more.
Oh.
So the topic is, what do you think were the big trends in personal audio in 2024, both in terms of the products that were released and in the discourse in the community? And how have you felt about them? By the way, this topic and the last topic were suggested by user Aaron Burr on the forum for headphones.com. Address is forum.headphones.com. Check that out.
One of my favorite vice presidents.
Anyway, yeah. Andrew, the discussion on the forum has been pretty good. I feel like I've been neglecting it a little bit, but I feel like when we were talking about like Head-Fi, the policy being you cannot bring up double blind tests, and the kind of unwritten rule of a lot of spaces, even on Discord, is that like if you disagree, you'll get stomped by the gentry. I like that there is healthy disagreement on the forum, and people seem to abide it pretty pretty much without a thought.
You naturally are going to get folks who come from kind of let's say they might not have gone into the measurement stuff nearly as deeply, but they're aware of it. And so they're expressing kind of what I think is a fairly popular opinion about a lot of this stuff. In many ways, it's a canonical opinion that's emerged more crystallized maybe in the last few years of sort of the discourse on this stuff, and they're just expressing that because that groks with their experience, and I don't fault anybody for it whatsoever. Yeah, so it's been a good debate with folks there. It's been nice.
Yeah. I will say, in Jude's defense, if the majority of your website doesn't want to talk about something and it always comes up, I can understand making a board for it. and then confining discussion to it.
Yeah,
I
no,
don't-
like,
Get your
that's
science
what-
out of here.
That's what we do on basically every audiophile Discord server about gaming products.
Yeah.
Like we
I mean,
literally
it's
do
just
everything possible
politics.
to curry those people out of view because like
Yeah.
none of us really want to talk about it.
I don't know. I want to talk about gaming products. The Maxwell I liked.
Okay, that's
not-
that's
Yeah, but
not
most of these
gaming
people are
product.
just
God,
like, what
it's so
wireless
clear
headset
you
can I
don't
get for
actually talk
$50?
to like any new people coming into
We
a headphone
should-
Discord
Hey,
server.
I measured those Turtle Beach headphones for LTT.
So I
and,
have
Okay,
a
that is
pitch.
not what
we
we're
should
talking
do
about.
a content piece where it's like audiophile reviewers answer questions from complete noobs, where you guys just have to find, like, on our forum, on the Discord, on Reddit or whatever, people asking the most "Hello, I'm 14, I want headphone" questions ever, and I just want you to fucking live blog the experience of talking to these people.
Look, I've been in the trenches. I've done my time. I want to see.
Same.
I want to see Andrew do that. I
Oh,
wanna
you
see
think I
DNS
haven't?
Same.
do that.
You think I haven't done my
Yeah.
time?
Yeah.
I think if you did, it was
Oh
a
my
different
God.
time, old man.
Well, it wasn't in video format, if that's what you're asking.
Oh no, I just mean like
That's what you want, is in video format.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah,
try
absolutely.
and I mod like the LTT server and stuff, and so I try and help out in,
Oh,
like, the audio
God.
section there, and it's. I mean, there's actually quite a bit which is quite good discussion in there, but then there's also just like, hey, I've got $43 to spend on a wireless gaming headset with a mic, and it's mostly just that.
Well, the problem with the
But if you had
LTT audio
$45.
Discord, like the audio portion of their Discord, is there's a few users there who really should be banned and who haven't been banned and continue to shit it up. Like, it has the problem that all functionally unmoderated servers have.
I mean, yeah, I've mentioned that. The problem is that they've not crossed the line yet.
This is why people
not a-
making
not a-
all these Byzantine rules about who they can ban is surreal to me.
It's the way the world works.
Just take the
Silos.
shot.
I've noticed
Anyway.
a
Better to
trend
beg
for
forgiveness than to
more and
ask
more-
permission.
So this is a bit of a weird one, and it's kind of niche and isn't really a big deal. But USB-C, usually I'd be like, yes, USB-C on more things, that's great. More and more like desktop DACs and stuff have just got USB-C now, and I'm not sure I like it because it's really hard to plug it in when you can't see the plug. I like USB, big, fat, chunky, square. B
I
for
like
that
Type
reason.
B.
And
I
as
like
you
that.
get older, you'll appreciate it even more.
The mating cycles are also kind of a problem for USB-C, to be honest. Like,
The what, sorry?
USB-C is not actually as durable.
It's not. It's not. nearly as
USB-C is
durable.
also like 18 different standards all wearing one trench coat. It's a bit difficult.
It's one of those things
USB,
where we're paying a lot
not-
of
there is no
small
U in
prices.
USB.
Yeah. We're paying a lot of small prices for one big prize, and that big prize is the universal connection. But then we have to
Well, no,
deal
it's
with all
universal
these
connection,
little-
but actually this USB-C cable isn't the same as this other USB-C cable. And if you want to do this particular thing, you need this particular type of USB-C cable.
Yeah.
They're not always backward compatible.
Yes.
I mean, that
like, it's-
one's the USB forum being shit, to be fair. They should be much better about their standardization and their rules
Well, you
for
don't think
compatibility.
USB 2x2 Gen 2 is a good and easily to understand naming scheme? Yeah.
All right.
Let's talk about the
Can we
topic.
talk about the trend? Because the
Yeah, let's
trend
do
that
that,
I want
sorry.
to identify, the trend I want to identify is the new meta, which we need to change the name, but it is the JM1 based IEM tunings that many manufacturers have now thankfully started to shoot for.
Well, I'll talk to you guys.
On a number of products.
Have they? Okay, so I
they
think
haven't
it's
done it right. They haven't done it
I
right,
think
but
it's
they have at least
absolutely been a
identified
trend
good.
in the community discourse. But I don't think brands are like actively saying like, "Hey, let's shoot for this meta thing," unless Kryn is telling them to.
I think they shoot for whatever sells. So if the hype is all around,
I don't think there's any discrete thing that leads to sales other than like involvement with the reviewer. Like I don't think anything sonically has been shown to sell more than like a Harman
I
IEM.
think target
Yeah, I haven't
adherence
seen-
generally has been a selling point in the IEM market, let's be honest.
Sorry, what has
a lot
been?
of people
Sorry, what?
target curve adherence, whatever the current
Generally, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, but the community discourse. Okay, fine. We're not saying necessarily like this has made the biggest sales numbers, right?
Yeah,
but
But that's part of the
certainly
question is that we can comment on the community
Yeah,
discourse
exactly.
aspect of it too.
Yeah. So at least that picking up steam has been a positive thing. Even if people don't fully understand it, the fact that there's now a lot more. I was going to say noise, but it's not necessarily noise. I don't mean it in that sense. But even though there is a lot more people making noises about it, I think is a good thing.
Yeah, agreed.
Speaking of trends in IEMs, even Sennheiser has now fallen victim to anime on the box.
Yeah,
Really?
I was gonna save that
Yes.
for
Oh,
news
have you not seen it?
impressions.
No.
Olympus
Oh,
has
okay.
fallen. It's in it's in the
no.
chat. It's in live stream planning.
What?
You've got to have a look. It's hang on, let me see if I can put the picture up.
Oh, I see it. No.
Yeah.
No.
Where is my OBS?
Oh my
So
god.
people can see. Look at that. It's anime waifu on the box.
This is for a specific region though, right?
No idea.
I don't know.
I haven't looked
Because
into
I mean,
it.
the thing is, like, I can't see how this would actually like work if you saw it, in a Best Buy. I feel like it would have the opposite effect of what they're wanting. So
Humanity is
maybe it
cooked.
is region
We're done.
specific,
We're done.
but nonetheless, Olympus has fallen.
I don't know if it would have the opposite effect, actually.
Griffin, you're a slideshow, by the way.
Yeah, I don't know how to fix that. So
Just stop your video and then start it again.
Is Blaine actually not
any
coming
better?
back?
Oh, well.
He's not. He doesn't. IEMs are lo-fi, so he doesn't participate
Oh,
That's
fair
fine.
enough.
in IEM discussions. He's only So okay, so that's disappointing. Other trends. Closebacks. There were a bunch
yeah,
of
I would
closebacks.
say closed backs is definitely one of the better things about this year. There were a few
Last year.
well, last year, yeah. There were a few damn good ones. And that deserves recognition because that has probably never been true before.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of other like specific things from because it's about this past year, right? Like trends that we observed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like IEM releases are even more, shotgun approach. So it's hard to like it. It feels, and I don't mean in terms of like the tunings that they go after, because there is always that consistency, seemingly, or things pointing in that sort of some sort of target adherence direction. But I mean the just sheer volume of them that have come out. It's like I can't even keep up. It's
Yeah, the thing is, a lot of the trends for 2024
Is
are
it
just
over
like
yet?
continuations. No,
yeah, we're not. We're just talking
no,
about trends.
let him go. a lot of the trends are just continuations of past trends.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
the IEM market stayed releasing a bunch of stuff that was just kind of throwing
Yeah.
things at the wall to see what sticks.
I mean,
Sennheiser
wireless.
continued to learn nothing from their past releases.
Yeah.
Hi-Fi Man continued to refresh basically their entire product lineup.
I suppose that's a trend, right?
Yeah.
Like the unveiled.
Well, yeah, no, like they did it with the stealth magnets, and
Yep. The trend is that driver story and marketing is still more compelling than frequency response when it comes to sales.
That is a trend that has continued, and
yeah, and
I don't think you can call something a trend when it's fundamental to an industry.
brand legacy is also still continuing.
Yeah.
Like the over-ear ANCs, TWS ANCs are still bad. Google still made a terrible sounding product with the Pixel Buds Pro 2. Samsung's Galaxy Buds were worse this year, past year. Sony's continue to be bad. The trend continues of features being more important than sound quality. What else? Oh, the trend. Oh, here's a trend. Those stupid fucking earring things.
Oh, the
right?
open air buds.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a good trend. That's like the only good trend
that came out this year or this past year, including one from Nothing, which not good.
I want to say none of them are going to be good in this, like in the same way that a flathead earbud will never be good.
Well, actually, the issue with that one was more, I think, the wearing style. It made it so that because it had the ear hooks, it wasn't on the bottom, so it made it so that if you had I don't know what the right word for this, but where the ear attaches to the head, if that's larger for somebody, they're going to get no bass. But if it's smaller, then you will get some bass, right? So it's quite variable in that sense. Yeah. The other trend might be there were some products released with MEMS. I don't know if that's
Stinky trend, bad trend.
yeah,
Trend go by.
that
High
trend will
trend.
disappear. Planar IEM trends seemingly fizzled out. That was
Over. Thank God.
over. Yeah, that's done. The
Chat notes that the return of legacy media players is a thing, and I would agree that is a new trend.
That is
in
a thing.
2024.
Yeah.
And it makes me want to shoot myself.
kill me now.
I like it.
I saw a Bluetooth tape deck recently.
That's pretty funny.
Oh my god!
So here's the really wild thing.
Bring
about
back the 8-track.
So first off, it's a tape deck that can output your fucking cassette tape audio via Bluetooth. But wait, we're gonna really cook with gas. It comes with a cassette that's a Bluetooth receiver.
That's
so you can
sick.
use it as a Bluetooth speaker by putting the cassette in it.
Oh my god.
Jack, I haven't heard that many of them, but the ones I have heard, I have not liked. Yes, he's asking if I dislike
that
planar
trend.
IEM.
The trend is it came and went. It was just here.
What's unfortunate is that it could actually be useful for something, but you would need to like seriously rethink IEM ergonomics to make use of the good characteristics of a planar.
Sure. What other trends? Were there any trends in like driver, like transducer types or designs?
Mark said that planars are now being often used, like microplanars are being used in DAs. That's kind of been a common thing.
Yeah.
Bone
conduction?
Much to the detriment of everyone.
No, bone conduction was like a 2022, 2023 meme. Like,
I've seen a few come out.
Like every year
it's
you get like
continuing.
an Empire Ears IEM, and you'll maybe get like one from some Chi-Fi brand that gives it a shot.
I mean, I feel like the trend of 2024 was people focusing on stupid shit. Again, it's just slightly new stupid shit.
Wow, Mr. Cynical over here.
Well,
were there any good trends?
Sorry,
other
I've just
than
got to quickly say,
game ones?
there's a bunch of people in chat being like, "No, the concept you don't understand. That's Hatsune Miku. It doesn't. There's anime on the box. That's the point. It doesn't matter who it is or why.
Oh, is this about the
There's anime
Sennheiser
on the box.
Hatsune Miku?
Yes.
Sorry,
Yeah, no,
it might be a
Sennheiser has
collab, it might be
fallen.
specific somewhere. It's just there is now anime on a Sennheiser box.
I will say, if you're going to do an anime girl,
it's got
at least they did a name brand one.
They got that Sennheiser budget.
They did the Coca-Cola of waifus, yes.
Exactly. Joel, Hatsune Miku is a character associated with a program called Vocaloid, which is a software that allows you to create vocal samples digitally.
Are
there any other trends that we're
cartoon
missing?
children the way that Griffin is to philosophy.
That's just like an unironic green flag. That is a very good personality trait, Andrew. But are there any other trends we're missing before we move on, guys? Because we're going to move on to news and impressions now.
I mean, I think something that I think is kind of a trend of concern to me is that we are still sort of obsessed with, well, now it's the new meta thing, and I know you guys talked about that at length, but like, I really wish people would get on the trend of not just focusing, like hyper focusing on small FR things, or for that matter on...
Don't say too much about that because we'll talk about that in Fight Club.
Yeah, that's not a trend. That's like just a thing that exists in the Discord.
Yeah.
But that's part of the Fight Club topic, so we'll talk about that in a second.
I actually just disagree with that take, I think.
Okay,
wait
well,
wait until after news and impressions. Talk about.
I actually do have one other thing. I'd note that I think that we're seeing more headphones that are made out of steel, and I think that that's a bad trend. It's coming from the Chi-Fi stuff because the Chinese love that look.
You mean like the Cosmo and stuff like that?
The Cosmo, the FT1, and with the FT1, we actually see one of the problems with this metal-centric build, which is that it is not always actually stronger.
Okay.
And I mean, like, this is a trend that's sort of accelerated. I remember it used to be fairly rare to see prominently used metal connection fixtures all over a headphone. That's why stuff like ZMF sort of stood out more when they started out. But I feel like it's an intensification of this trend of all the surfaces have to be made out of premium materials.
Plastic is fine.
Plastic
Yeah,
works well.
People need
Can't
to tell
throw-
brands that.
Toss a Cosmo over your shoulder on stream, why don't you?
No. No,
All right,
I'm not
you wanna
going
move
to.
on, guys.
Yeah. Sorry, I just had to flog my hobby horse.
Oh,
Okay.
wait, sorry. One quick trend that unfortunately has sort of kind of died a bit because the first few implementations weren't great. DSP cables. I'm annoyed that trend didn't continue.
It
I have another trend.
Yeah.
probably will.
I have
It
another
It
trend.
probably
will.
will. It's
Yeah.
just the
Somebody
ones that have
mentioned-
come out and not been
Somebody
great.
mentioned this in chat. DIY headphones.
Yes, that's true.
That's a
That's a
bad
good
trend.
Capra.
That is a bad
Aurora.
trend. Okay, well, no, hold on. What makes something DIY? Because,
Well-
like, I'm...
Okay. How about 3D printed? How about that as a trend?
Well, Aurora
no,
is
that
not
still
by and
tracks.
large 3D printed.
Is it not?
No.
Sierra's, yeah. Oh,
Sierra's
wait.
definitely 3D printed.
Sierra's 3D printed.
Sorry, I didn't say Aurora. I didn't mean Auroras. I meant
Oh no, well, Aurora's didn't.
Orbis.
Well, I guess they did
Sorry,
release it.
I meant what's one's
Orbis.
company?
Hi-Fi
Erebus. Is it Erebus?
Yeah,
No.
no.
Yes.
Orbis. Acoustic
Orbis.
Sierra. Hi-Fi
Right,
for
yeah,
all.
sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Omega.
Okay. Yeah. 3D printed headphones. There you go.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't mean to say, because like you could say mod house tungsten and stuff like that, right? But like I don't mean that. I mean like specifically the 3D printy stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice that SLS is being used, at least, right? Like, that's the right technology for the purpose. I'm not thrilled with it because it necessarily means high prices for end users, just because that's an expensive tech.
Reviewer collabs is not a trend from this past year, though. Reviewer collabs is just
Continued.
like a And in many ways,
Continued
it's
because
kind
it
of
drives
kind
sales.
of but in many ways, it's kind of tapered off because people are sick of it.
I don't know. That's tapering off. I mean,
It's just different people, different players.
How many did Hawaii Bad
no,
Boy
it's.
do
I
this
mean,
year?
the same people who were churning just crazily
Mm,
are still doing it.
just shitting out collabs, just left, right, and center.
I don't
the
quite
people who get
understand why
accused
from
of doing that with low effort are still doing it. But
Mm.
for example, like Cream
Charmaine-
hasn't. I don't think has released one this year except for the Dusk. But
Yeah,
I think
Kryn
it's
rel-
because he's.
No, Kryn did the Singolo
taking
low,
some-
didn't he?
I thought, was the
he did.
Singololo this year?
I think so.
Or last year, I guess,
No, I think it
now?
was this year.
I think it was this year.
Yeah.
Well, it's not this year anymore. It's 2025.
It was
guys.
2024, but yeah, no, I remember he released it right before Can Jam New York.
Yeah.
All right, so yes.
All right.
So in
let's
other
move on.
words, we're still doing collabs, and people are getting increasingly sick of it.
let's move on.
Yeah. Okay. News and impressions. So, I mean, the first piece of news that we actually had was, I think, the Sennheiser Miku collab.
Okay.
But we've talked about that. Are there any other news items you guys feel is pertinent to talk about before we do some impressions?
There was something, I've completely forgotten what it was, but it'll probably come back to me later.
I feel like there should be news. Sennheiser made a thread on Reddit asking what they could do better. I found that kind of cute.
They
don't know if
had
that's
one
really
like a
newsworthy.
They've
year
been doing that a
ago.
little bit.
Yeah,
And-
they've done that a couple times.
I'm
Is this not against the moderation policy? I don't know. Or the
I don't know. They're Sennheiser. What are you gonna do?
I guess, yeah.
It's a
I mean, like,
headphone.
they can still
They're
be
not gonna ban
banned. but-
Sennheiser.
I mean, they
Put a Miku on
believe me,
box, what are you
Arva
gonna
would
do about it?
absolutely if they broke the rules.
Wait, are you
but-
a mod on Reddit, Griffin?
No.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
I help Oratory.
You sounded offended. No.
No, I'm not a headphones mod. I help
Okay.
Oratory with his a little bit, but
You know, I think it's good that brands are just sort of saying, "Hey, we want feedback." You know, like, I think it would be good if
I-
more brands were like that. This
I'm
doesn't
mixed
mean
on it.
blindly accept it, to be clear, because most of the feedback people will give is bad.
yes.
However, I think that accepting that you were imperfect at a brand level is a very good thing, and having I mean, Sennheiser is the headphone company, right? Like, in hi-fi. So having them do it is good. It'd be good if more companies were just like, hey, what are your complaints?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I have no disagreement with that. Now that you've qualified that it does not mean blindly accept all criticism as actionable or worth acting upon, because I do feel like that's actually kind of screwed up their last like 5 to 7 years of business on the consumer side. Like I feel
Is
like
being too responsive.
too responsive to the wrong things. Like, and I could go through as an itemized list, like
Mhm. You
chasing
did.
chasing soundstage or bass
Yeah.
extension has, basically
I think for
made.
most brands, those are the pitfalls, though, right? Like the chasing soundstage
Yeah,
thing
but
is just
the
the.
difference is that Sennheiser is a brand that like has actually like historically made itself known for having vision and
Mhm.
doing interesting things and making like the best headphones ever made. So it's a little bit disappointing to just see them not only like, do the
Having
good thing of
uncontrollable
asking people their
diarrhea.
opinions and what, not crowdsourcing
This
ideas, but kind of
definitely,
getting an idea of what people want, but then
yeah.
like sacrificing the good things to not even
So
really get the gains that
here's the
people
thing,
want.
though. Knowing so what I've having spoken to some of the engineers who've worked on some of these products, there's a lot that they're aware of. This goes down to like my understanding of it, at least, is that this often goes down to um the production unit not ending up being what was in the mind of the engineer, and then kind of being hamstrung by
So you're
what
saying
that
we need the
product ended up being.
director's cut of the HD660S2.
Exactly. Well, I don't know about that one, but the 620S certainly. Certainly
So
the
the
620S.
620S is kind of an example of this, though, because I don't know why they thought it was necessary to minimize the damping of it. I
Yeah, I also don't know why, but I like
It
specifically
led
I'm
to a whole
thinking of
bunch of
the
narrowband resonances in the treble that I feel like could have been addressed
yeah,
fairly easily if they did.
yeah.
I don't
So
know what
again,
kind
I
of
don't
common knowledge
know
to do with the closed back headphone is you kind of have
I
to damp it because of those
yeah.
resonances.
So I don't know what like they didn't go into specifics on all of the things that they wished the production units had ended up having. I just know that there were some things that they had wished the production units had ended up doing better, and I think it was more specifically to do with the material for the pads was not, it ended up causing these channels which would create leaks,
Sure. Yeah.
and it's stuff it just makes me think like stuff like that I'm sure happens a ton, and not just to Sennheiser. So when they're going in and being like, what can we do better, in many ways it's like, hey, it's a good signal, right? It's like, tell us what you want more of, or where you want us to look. Really, I think, well, for a lot of brands, especially brands that do know what good is because they've done it in the past, what can we do better also should probably include, let's try and figure out how to ensure that the production stuff ends up being what you want it to be.
I mean, yeah, but that's like that's not what the Reddit
It's not what it's
discussion
about. I'm just saying
is about at all.
that's
Like
probably a separate.
it's
Yeah.
about like, hey, our last 5 years haven't really resulted in any bangers for us. Why do you guys think that is?
I mean,
Like,
I know exactly why that is.
well, yeah, no, like I don't think they don't know,
Yeah.
but I also think there is, they're sticking to their guns on the wrong things and being flexible on the wrong things. Like I would
So
rather they invert that. Like I wish they were more flexible on things like the things that would actually probably make them money, like addressing the fact that they did a poll for like what are you excited for from Sennheiser in 2025? And basically no one said true wireless IEMs, even though that is easily the highest selling
mhm.
of any like personal audio category. Like
Well, Momentum
they're the
4s were
headphone
not good
brand and they have a
really.
true wireless lineup that basically none of us care about or
Yeah.
talk about or want to see anything from. And it's because their reputation of sticking to their guns on a pretty poor tuning for like generations of that product
Yeah.
lineup is just kind of like a truth now about that product. I would much rather see them retool that somehow
Hmm.
and rewrite that legacy, because like I think all of us agree we would love an actually good sounding true wireless IEM. Like that's why we all simp the freaking Apple one. But I would be happy to no longer simp Apple and simp Sennheiser instead if they had a better one.
Yeah, I agree. Do you, out of curiosity, do you think the 660 S2 did well for them?
I mean,
I don't know the answer to this. I'm just curious.
I would assume not, based on how often the target audience, audiophiles, seems to talk about it online. I see very little mention of it on places like Headphone, other than the purchase
I
validation
don't
thread.
know. I actually think that there is a cult following behind that headphone. You know,
Cult kind of speaks to it being not a banger, though.
yeah. Well, I don't think it. I mean, it certainly didn't receive universal praise. That's true.
I would say it received a similar amount to the 660S.
Interesting. Yeah, I do see chatter about it, and I do see, well, people criticize me all the time for saying it wasn't very good, right? I'm not
I
sure.
think that might be biasing your impression of the reception of it a bit, but I think
Well,
I'm
yes
also
and no,
negatively
because it
biased.
well, sure, but it's also leading to, like, if you look on Reddit, right? Like that's one example, right? It feels like every week threads about people talking about how it's like their favorite headphone, and it did, it does well there. So I obviously these are people who disagree with me on it, and that's fine. But that's why I'm
Yes,
just
me too.
curious, like, was
Yeah.
this a thing that, despite the fact that it didn't perform well, wasn't received that, didn't have widespread acclaim from reviewers, may
How
still
does that
actually
impact
be?
sales?
Yeah, and I really don't know
Yeah, I
that
mean,
we can
I
say that
obviously
it
can't say.
doesn't.
I don't know their sales numbers.
Yeah,
I would assume
it is
that
in an
whatever they
attractive.
came out with as the new 6 Series open back would do well. It could sound really bad and it would probably still do
I
well.
think there's that element of it. They hit an attractive price point for people wanting to upgrade from their existing HD6 whatever product to a new one, or aspirational. It had the HD6 name, and it had really effective marketing about, well, people wanted more bass, so we gave it more bass. And then then all the narratives propagate around, oh, it has all the textural qualities in the bass and so on.
Yeah,
I
what
don't
I'm
know
saying
that
is
it
I
didn't
want
do
them to
well.
not do that.
Yeah, of course we don't.
Yeah.
We want them to not do that.
Yeah.
I don't know that it wasn't successful. Anyway, we can do impressions. You want to do that?
Yeah, I have a ton. Do you have anything?
Not really. My only, like, I did impressions, I think, last time of the Aria Unveiled, and then that's
You did.
the main thing I've been listening to lately because it's so
Okay.
bloody good.
Cool. Okay, well, I'll start with the one I teased earlier, which is the FT1 Pro here. Doug sent me his unit, so if you guys have seen the measurements on our forum or in the videos of his unit measured on the 4128, and I think it was the 43AG he also measured it on. That's this unit. So the way I changed my mind on it was when I was first listening to it, I kind of regarded it as like the worst parts of a 6XX and an XS edition XS combined. Like it has the kind of limpness and kind of slightly cloudy, stuffy mid-range of the XS, and some of the treble problems as well. But then also that same kind of like treble issue, but on the 6XX where it has a dip. So it's like simultaneously too dark and too bright because it has a big 6 to 8 kilohertz dip on my head, and then a little bit of a peak around 11K, a little bit of a peak around 6K. I don't really love the mids, but the more I listened to it and the more I kind of compared it to the 6XX, I realized that I like the comfort quite a bit more than the 6XX with the normal headband. I think it's also quite a bit. I don't have a scale, so I don't know this for sure, but it feels quite a bit lighter on my head than most other planar magnetic headphones I've had time with. The headband weirdly actually kind of works for me. And when it comes to the sound, I found that it's still more reasonable than any of the planars that I would be like forced to talk
Right,
about at this price range.
you're a no planar kind of guy in that one.
I am strictly a no planar,
Yeah.
especially in this price range kind of guy.
Mhm.
But this is a planar I'd be okay with recommending to someone. Like, and it's a planar I was totally fine
Did
listening to
you
most of my music with. Like, I
did
never
you try
had
pad
like
swapping?
outright. What's up?
Did you try pad swapping at all?
No. And honestly, pad swapping, I don't get the fun out of it that most people do, and I actually don't really think it's all that productive to reviews. Like
Oh,
I
it's not
feel like,
productive to reviews, but I couldn't. The
yeah, I
comfort
feel
of
like
it with those pads was so bad that I had to.
I'll be back in 1
I'm
sec.
fair. It's
And
important
actually,
to lay out when
but the
the
reason why it's
comfort won't work.
interesting on that is that pad swapping, the change is so minor to the frequency response. It's actually
Yeah, I
really
would assume
consistent
that
even with different
from
pads.
the design. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so I think it has a better mid-range and treble than the XS. And I think it has better bass than the 6XX. So
Mhm.
it's kind of an issue of framing where it's like, okay, yes, it has several of the shared downsides between those two, but it also has upsides specific to either of them that you can't really get in the other one. So it's a weird product in that it's kind of hard to get really excited about.
Mhm.
But it is one that I feel like is actually a really important headphone that came out this year.
So the other thing to consider with that is that a lot of the headphones that one would compare it to came out originally at $500 or something higher, and
Yeah,
then
no,
came
for
down in
sure.
price, whereas that one
And
started
it
out
sounds better than those headphones, like
sure,
by and
but that one
large.
also started out at 200 or whatever it is, right?
Yeah, no, I'm very excited for this to hit
Yeah.
$150 so the Sennheiser HD560S can die the death it deserves.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a reasonable headphone. I think my review of this thing is probably going to end up being mildly positive. But if anything, I actually think my take on it is probably not as optimistic as it should be for a person buying. Like, I think a
Yeah.
person buying should maybe actually be a little bit more interested in this than I am, just because it is as inexpensive as it is, and it sounds better than a lot of headphones. Like, I would take this over the 490 Pro sonically that we made our headphone of the
Ooh,
year.
I don't know that I would. To me, that's shout like with no pad swaps. I don't know. I
Yeah,
would
no pad swap.
I
I
personally would
mean,
not because
I would.
the
This is
shout
way
on
less
that gets
cloyingly
to
like
me.
bassy, and the there's less 4K. So your unit, I think, had a screwy 4K area,
Yeah, well,
which
it's also channel
might be
imbalance.
yeah, like one of the sides
Yeah.
was. But I don't get that with this, and I definitely get that
Mm.
with the 490 Pro.
I agree. 490 Pro, it's basically the four to the what do we call that lower treble?
It's like
Whatever.
3K and above.
Yeah, but it's not shouty the 490 Pro. Whereas that I did find shouty because the rest of the treble is
I
a bit
found it. I found it a
more
little
down.
chalky. I found it the 490 Pro.
Chalky.
Yeah, yeah.
No, but you know
But
what I
yeah,
mean. It
and
has
as
like there's like that kind of like maybe some people call it glare, but basically when the 3 kilohertz range kind of dominates over the rest of the mid treble.
yeah, I've never liked glare as a term. I feel
Uh,
like it's pretty ambiguous. It does what the audiophile terms I like are the ones that have some sort of onomatopoetic thing going on. So like chalky actually has a lot of like
I've never
fricative
thought of
sounds in it that would like sound
but okay, the
that
reason
would
why I like
have the
shouting
sound
because
at that
it sounds
frequency
like
is what
someone's
I'm
shouting
saying.
at you.
Well, no,
we
but
should
shout
explain
I know what
would,
headphone you're wearing, by the way, Andrew.
What's that?
What headphone are you wearing? Chat wants to know.
It's not important.
anyway.
I think we should
As
replace shouty with Shakira like.
she's a treasure.
Yeah, but she sounds like she's singing like she's falling off a cliff.
Anyway, but as far as the subjective stuff, I would say this is like, I think because it's a little bit more behaved in the treble on my head, I do perceive it as more dynamic than like the XS. I also think it has to do with the relationship between the bass and the mid range. I think this one has a little bit more filled in mids than the XS does. So it feels both a little bit like snappier and like less muffled, but also just kind of like it keeps up better with separation type of stuff. There's less occlusion or whatever. So yeah, $200, solid.
So it's
Don't really
5 out of
love
5
it,
stars,
but
the
I
best
definitely
thing
don't
ever.
hate it. Wait, what's up?
So it's 5 out of 5 stars, best thing ever. No cap, for real, for real.
I would say it's
Hype.
for me comfortably a 3-star, but for someone who wants to try out planers, it's the one I would recommend, and I would recommend you spend absolutely no more money than that. Moving on.
Wow.
Well, I mean, I can't think of a planar more expensive that I like the stock sound of more, except for maybe the MM500. But yeah. Anyway,
Sponsored
I
by
have,
Marshall Mathers.
all right, so I have 2 wireless headphones here. This is a review that's probably going to come out after the review I'm working on of the Lenses and the Juris, and after the FT1 Pro review, and probably after the review of the next thing I'm going to talk about. But this is the Ugreen Max 5C. This is a like $30 or $40 wireless ANC
Not
headphone.
available
I
in
know.
Canada.
Oh, that sucks. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I
I
know
was-
Blaine
I
and
was
Cameron
gonna buy it.
hated it. I don't necessarily love it. I actually think I'm gonna pull up measurements here for the people, if I can get that going. Yeah, that works. Okay.
Stream's gonna crash.
Oh my god, it might. I hope
May
it
it
doesn't.
rest in peace.
It was nice. It was nice chatting with folks.
Okay, yeah, that works. So this is the diffuse field compensated response for the Ugreen Max 5C on its only reasonable EQ preset, which is the jazz preset.
Yeah.
So you can see how the effects of the active noise canceling, as it gets more extreme, you lose more and more bass. But overall, I would call this a pretty reasonable tonality. I will say above the 2 kilohertz point too, I don't really relate too much to anything going on up here. I would say there's a pretty noticeable 5 kilohertz peak actually right there for me, and that this 10, 11 kilohertz peak is quite a bit larger on my head. I would also say that the tuning I prefer of these is actually the general one in blue. I feel like the ANC Ultra loses too much low mid relative to the kind of 1K honk right here. But for the price, it sounds pretty good, but the comfort is pretty bad on my head. It does have that kind of like typical like nothing like wireless headphone
Right.
headband. The cups are actually nicely ear shaped, and they are
Okay.
decently deep. But the problem is that the headband is not very well designed, such that the cups don't articulate enough on the kind of that way axis,
Mhm.
so that when I put it on my head, there's a big gap on the underside.
AirPods Max
of the
issue.
earpads. Yeah, I mean a ton of headphones have that issue for me, but this is just another
So
one
does
of
Ace.
them.
Same thing.
Yeah, sacrificing ergonomics for looks. But this is the Moondrop Edge, which I will also pull up the measurement for. Done on the same
Can I
rigs.
say something controversial?
Please.
Oh,
I hate how that looks.
Oh,
the
really?
Edge?
Yeah.
But it is the
I
correct
quite
color.
like it.
It's the right color.
Immediately, I am repulsed by the look of
That's
that.
so interesting. Why?
I don't like the handwriting, but
Yeah, it's not great.
the color is correct. It is the correct color. One of the correct colors.
Okay,
there are
cool.
3. That's one of them.
Anyway, back
Apparently, they
to
have an anime version if you'd prefer, Blaine.
Fuck.
okay, so back to the measurement. This is essentially how I hear it. Now you'll notice this is ANC off mode. When I turn ANC on, the bass does go bye-bye and it sounds crazy thin to me. So I would not recommend this preset with ANC on. Instead, if you're going to use
Right,
ANC on, I would probably recommend the extra
see
bass
the-
preset you see here.
Do you? I
Um,
don't see here. Are you?
Oh, you
showing it?
don't? Oh, shoot. Sorry, guys. There you go. Sorry about that. So yeah, the purple line is with ANC off in the balanced preset. It's nice. I actually find the treble on this to probably be the best of any ANC headphone I've ever
Oh.
used. And you can probably
It
see
looks
why if you know my taste. Like that 10, 11 kilohertz area being dipped does work very well for me in particular.
Oh yeah, that probably won't work for me.
But the mid range is solid.
Yeah.
Like good even in ANC off mode. And the extra bass mode does make it a little bit worse, but it's totally serviceable. It does have a few other absolutely atrocious presets that if you're looking at the screen right now, you'll see my pain.
Jesus.
But yeah, no, it's really bad. But in terms of the sonic
what is
compression,
that
I
one?
actually,
Violin?
dude,
What?
I don't know. But in terms of the sonic
Jesus.
compression, I actually think it's my favorite sounding ANC headphone that I've
Okay.
heard.
But you still haven't heard the Final Audio UX 3000.
I haven't. I would probably like it more than that based on the measurements, because I think that the mid range on this is actually like impressive, like
Okay.
good, in the ANC off mode. I like that the ear cups are like very large ovals. Like if you compare to the U Green, I don't know how well you guys can see it because the U Green's
Can you send me that?
there we go. The Edge.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll send it to you when it's done. I
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that it's like a similarly sized oval, but that like it's got more room on the corners, which is where I usually have an issue with this kind of design. The headband has more padding than that. It's also like way better at like fitting on my head on the
Mhm.
underside
It
here.
looks like
It's
like a lot
fairly
of things.
ergonomic. I will say
Yeah.
the pads aren't quite deep enough. I don't know if anyone could see that, but
But still
the-
way better than so many of the ANC headphones that come out these days. Like,
yeah, for sure. There's not quite enough room in the cup. There's like the driver kind of protrudes a little bit. There's like a grill here, and then there's like a raised bit of foam. So it's not perfect ergonomically, unfortunately, which is kind of what I was most excited for on this design. But the stock sound quality is out of the box with ANC off much better, because when you take a U Green out of the box, it looks like where is it? Looks like this. Which yeah, that's a lot of bass.
playing your
The
muted.
U Green is sickeningly bassy, and I can't stand it. Even in the less bass mode, it has way too much.
Yeah, I don't agree. Maybe you got better seal on your head than I do, because I don't get much seal at all because of the gap underneath.
And because of your hair.
Yeah, but this is $80 and it fits me better. The stock sound quality is good. I didn't have any problems with connectivity, and the app was going well when I was using it.
Cool.
It actually let me do.
Is it the same app that like the Moondrop?
Yeah, it's the Moondrop Link. Yeah.
Damn it.
And it let me do the thing where I can like control the headphone with the phone, but the output signals can come from my computer. So for measuring it, it was actually fairly painless to measure as well.
How's the? Oh, that's nice. How's the ANC on it?
It's whatever. I mean, it's $80, so like it's not incredible, but it was pretty good. It canceled out my washing machine pretty well. I didn't test it in like a car or bus or anything like that, but fairly solid. And I would say the same for the U Green as well. It's like not good, but like I would say it's like on par with like a Batiste or something like that.
Okay, then that's fine. It does a little
Fine
bit,
is
but-
exactly what I'd call it.
Yeah.
And now the big one, the one that I am easily most excited for out of any of these is the Soft Ears Volume S.
It's an IEM. I'm way more excited about that ANC headphone.
Nah, this thing fucks.
Okay.
So I'll pull up a measurement, but overall, this is probably the best bass and treble balance I've like ever heard in an IEM.
Okay.
And I know that is considerable hype. And I don't know if this is showing on the screen yet. But that's what it looks like.
Sorry, say what it is.
It is the Soft Ears Volume S. Sorry if I didn't say that, guys. My bad. But yeah, so this is the Soft Ears Volume S with the stock clear tips it comes with, which are soft ears UC, I think ultra clear is what they stand for, tips. And they also come with the same tips that come with like the Truthier Nova and the variations, like those grayish black tips, which don't make a huge difference, but I do slightly prefer the black tips. They just warm things up a little bit. But what you're seeing on the screen is the IEM is compensated to an adapted version of the JM1DF that we use at headphones.com, but it is shown against my own personal preference tilt, which is roughly 9 decibel bass to treble delta.
24 dB.
I'll show it across the preference bounds there. And you can see the bass and treble are basically right where I want them. The mid-range is kind of where I have a few issues, but it's reasonable enough that like the issues I've had with most IEMs coming out that have good mid-ranges, like the, well, I'll pull up the KE4 for comparison. That's there in red, or the Mega 5 EST. I'll make that a different color. I'll make that pink. The difference in bass and treble is very important. And you'll see compared to the high senior Mega 5 EST, the mid-range isn't actually that different either.
Yeah, it looks a lot more neutral overall.
It is. Like, in terms of its overall spectral tilt, I don't know if I've heard a more neutral IEM. It kind of reminded me of a less warm version of the IER M7 I reviewed, which I did quite like in terms of its overall tilt, but it was a little, it was still a little V-shaped, like a little, maybe U-shaped would be a better
The thing that
word
looks
for
like it might bug me is the 1 to 3 kilohertz range.
Yeah, so here's what I'll say. If you compensate to the ISO DF, like that's still there, but the like 3 kilohertz or 2 to 4 kilohertz range,
Right.
it's going to depend
Oh, I
on
see.
where your individual canal resonance for your HRTF is. So just
The other
looking at
thing,
JM1
yeah.
DF might not be the clearest way
Right.
to look at that area. But I'm also going to show it raw for people who want to see it like that.
I do like it raw. The other thing that I'm looking at is that 5 kilohertz forwardness there. I always worry about
I
that.
don't notice it.
Okay.
Yeah. Now your length mode's going to creep lower, and maybe we'll balloon
always
that area just a little bit.
But well, it also probably depends on the insertion depth potential, because if for me it could actually compensate for that slight dip right after the 5K thing, so that might actually sound smoother.
It'll depend on many things. Now, I will say, I have many good things to say about this IEM sound. It doesn't sound low res or slow like the Mega 5 EST and KE4 kind of do. Like the bass has nice tactility and speed, and the attack is all there. The bass texture is all there. It doesn't have that kind of weird cloudiness effect that something like the DT200 had for me. It's a very clear sounding IEM that also doesn't have to boost a ton of treble to do that. Like you saw versus all of the other options, like it's plenty clear sounding. And I know that some people who tolerate a lot more treble than I do have heard this and still think it sounds good and whatever.
Right.
It's just kind of evidence that you don't need to have.
It's not just for the warm poo enthusiasts.
It's not just for the warm poo enthusiasts. No, if anything, it reminds me of kind of like a supercharged hexa, where like you kind of massage the length mode of the hexa a bit and drop the 11 kilohertz resonance. And then most of it's fairly similar. Like it maybe has a little bit more mid bass, which I could use on a hexa, and less sub bass, which I could also use versus a hexa, because I feel like it having so much sub bass, but not really a lot of mid bass is what a lot of people complained about without knowing they were complaining about it with regards to hexa's bass. But it's well vented. It's got a nice slit right there for the venting. It's ergonomic for me. I could absolutely see that being a problem for other people.
I'm just curious about the
nozzle.
The nozzle.
So the nozzle is 5 point something millimeters. It's not super wide.
I worry more about the contour thickness of the second. So you know how like the nozzle kind of tapers. There's two sections there. There's the nozzly bit, and then there's the part that's actually the shell. I
Yep.
worry about the thickness of that bit because in the past, that's the
If
kind
I
of
were
thing that has
you,
actually.
if I were you, I would be worried about it. Like
Yeah.
to all the people watching this, I would be a little bit worried about the ergonomics of this IEM. I do feel like it's a little bit
And Softgear's
unnecessarily big.
ergonomics have been really bad in the past.
That's kind of ironic given their name.
I know.
I was expecting to have more issues with the ergonomics based on like just what I saw
Right.
when I opened the
Yeah.
box than I actually did. But that said, I can already tell like it'll probably be a not for everyone thing.
hmm
But sonically, like at $320, which is like the dusk price, like every day over any of the new meta IEMs we've reviewed, I
All
would
right.
take this.
All right. I have to.
I
have
want
to
us to sell it. I hope we sell it. I really like the cable. It actually reminds me of the
We probably won't. We only sell the stuff that's bad. No, I'm just kidding.
Jesus. No, we don't.
Some of it's good. Some of it's good.
We sell Azuris, therefore that's not true. This cable reminds me of the one that comes with the Headphone 2 GT, which is like a very like thin, lightweight paracord braided cable. I think it's 4-wire. Chin cinch isn't the best. Ear hooks are fine. Comes with a 3.5 and a 4.4 adapter. What I actually was not expecting to like as much, but I actually do really like is that this is the first IEM I've reviewed that came with one of these little pouches to separate the two earpieces. Yeah, I mean I don't review that many IEMs, but I do really like this.
Does it have an anime waifu on the box though?
Wait, so it comes with a scrotum?
Good.
It comes with a nice sack to separate your pieces.
And you guys were going after me in the comments. Jesus.
But it also comes with this hardshell case, which is for, if you remember the Dusk, Andrew, it came with like that leather, or kind of leather case. Basically that, but with a much more luxurious, like plush feeling leather on the outside.
Wait, how much is it?
$320. So same price as the price as the Dusk.
Take note.
I think Dusk might be same price. Correct me if I'm wrong.
But does it have?
I love this case.
Does
it does more than any of the IEMs that have come out with like reasonable mid-range tuning, but like problems in the bass and treble.
Okay.
I think most people might find it a little bit too neutral. Like I feel like
the people want bass, you know. Like
that's what I'm saying. Like people tend to expect big bass in IEMs, and like if you're one of those people, like just go for something else. But if you really want to hear like what I would call a spectrally even IEM, it's probably one of the only ones I would say actually achieves that.
Nah, you just hate fun.
No, I just like when things aren't occluded.
I'm just kidding.
But yeah, Mark seems to quite like it as well. Oh, I didn't say. So it does come with a tuning switch, which I don't know if you can see is the little gold bit right there is a little pot or a potentiometer for a little switch. It comes with a little tool to turn that. It has a high impedance mode, which I will show you. Or actually, I didn't upload the measurements yet. It sounds terrible. I'll just go to Mark's site and show you that because he hasn't measured. Shouts out to Mark from Super Review, who is the one that turned me on to this IEM and told me he would probably be good to review. But yeah, you can see I hope you can see the measurement there. So the high impedance mode is the terrible one, and the low impedance mode is quite nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it just a binary switch or is it an adjustable thing?
Wait, we canceled Mark earlier in the stream for what?
For making Swiglink.
No, Joel tried to cancel him, but was unsuccessful.
We can also cancel him for reviewing the bokeh.
Oh, right. Yeah. He's already canceled for that.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Mark.
Mark is one of my favorite
binary
reviewers. Period.
That's not a contest.
Well, also because he's a fellow Belroy boy.
So you're biased. Got it.
Yeah, of course.
You got to deal with bokeh later today. Yeah, let me know if you need anything, man. Anyway, but that's it for my impressions. Excited to finish the Lenses Azuris thing so I can start the other stuff because I actually am like fairly excited about a few of these things. So
Okay.
What the fuck is Belroy again? Is
it's
it
a
just the
bag
bag?
manufacturer. Mhm.
Yeah,
Oh, so you're just bag boys.
that's right.
Yes.
Let's see.
Well, you usually fall into one of two camps: Peak or Belroy. And we're Belroy boys.
What if
I
I don't
didn't
fall
know it
into
was
either?
binary like that.
It's not binary. I'm making that up entirely. There's many other brands.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I just know that you have the Peak design thing.
Yeah, a friend of mine gave me that.
Yeah, it's also good.
Yup. Hold on, I'm just
I need to get a new bag.
I'm just
Camera bag,
answering
actually.
Joel's question real quick.
The Peak. I
I
did
did-
look at the Peak design ones. They just look
I
like they'd kind of be a bit fiddly to put
Hmm.
stuff in through the sides and stuff. Maybe hard to tell from just the photos. People
have
I
you
just
tried
used one of
Belroy?
their slings.
No, I'm open to suggestions. I've been using a Amazon one, which actually I like quite a lot. It was worked really well.
I don't know
Put the
about
strap
the
going, I need to
slings,
get it.
but the Belroy backpack that I use is incredible. I think Mark knows more about the Belroy. I don't. What is that? What is that called?
Sling?
I started to try and get
Is
an
it a
LTT
sling?
backpack, but I don't know how ideal that would be as a camera bag.
I don't like the way those look.
I
Same.
wouldn't recommend an LTT backpack as a camera bag. It's really what it is, and I use it for this, is the most like physical storage you can get into the personal item slot of any airline.
Right.
So
That
it's
makes sense.
basically for you're not allowed to have a carry-on and you want to put multiple days of clothes and all
Yeah.
the stuff you need in something.
Yeah,
If I'm flying though, I'm bringing my camera, so I need that.
I recommend
I
Mission.
mean, it would fit
camera
it.
bag.
It's a high capacity bag. It's just not something that you can easily.
Yeah.
If it's heavily loaded, you cannot easily get in there and get stuff out. Is my experience.
Mission is like I have this mission. I can't remember the name of it, but it's I think it's like $400 or $500. It's expensive, but it's really really high quality and it's perfect for a camera bag. The thing is, I don't like to use it when I'm just doing regular travel because the Belroy bag is better, and the Belroy bag is like $200, like for regular everyday stuff.
Yeah.
All right. I don't have any impressions.
Fight
Do you guys
Club?
have- Fight Club.
Fight
yes.
Club.
Unless Blaine.
Actually, before Fight Club, I was talking to Taryn in our Discord, and after reflecting on things, if we do an IEM brand, it should be FOMO Audio.
Oh, that's good. Fuck. That's good. Why would you say that publicly? Someone's gonna take that. That's annoying. I really wish you hadn't said that. That's really good. All right. Well, moving on. So for
All
Fight
right.
Club, why is using a single metric to judge products good or bad? E.g., SINAD, target adherence, etc.
I actually don't know where you guys fall on this. Like, maybe we should each.
Okay,
give
so
the-
well, should we start with talking about headphones first, or
Sure. Okay.
Saskia first?
Are we? Sir, are we? Are
I
we?
think
who is,
I
who
think
is
we should
single
start
metric
at the
good, single
meta,
metric
the
bad?
meta level here, in my view.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So
go ahead.
I'm of the
That
opinion
sounds like it's
that,
going to be in
it's not
philosophy,
that-
though.
No.
My view is it's not that single metrics are bad. It's just that only ever looking at one thing and being rather absolutist about it is bad. I.e., saying that this DAC has 1 dB more SINAD, therefore it is better, and not looking at anything else. Or this headphone is slightly closer to the Harman target, therefore it is better. Those are the things which I
have
personally
another
disagree
reason why I don't like single metric.
with. Oh,
It perpetuates dogma.
yes. That's the big part of it. Like, because on the one hand, if something exactly follows the Harman target, it's probably going to be quite a good headphone. But taking this approach of, well, any deviation from the Harman target whatsoever is objectively bad and should be fixed. And some people even going as far as to say, if you prefer something that isn't exactly Harman over something that is exactly Harman, you are wrong. Those are the things which I think are damaging.
Yeah. So I think I agree with you then, Cameron, and you and I are probably on the single metric bad point, side of this debate. And to go to the SINAD video that we did, single metric is actually causing more harm because it is or one of the points there was that it is obfuscating what's actually going on there, um, because it is because it is a single metric and not evaluating separately. With that said, and this is where I think I'm anticipating Blaine's response here, it is theoretically possible where single metric could work for something. It would just need to be done differently.
Yes. And it's
So,
also
yeah.
possible to go too far the other way, because like, I mean, the issue with single metric being bad is that, well, the Harman research tells us that people's preferences differ, but also we know that, you know, just HRTF differences and stuff, some of the particularly fine-grained stuff, it, you know, your ear or your HRTF isn't going to perfectly match the HRTF of a particular rig or the person sitting next to you. So your absolute perfect response is not going to be identical to the person sitting next to you, which inherently means that some of these small deviations are going to suit some people more or less. You have to accept some level of variation in the measurements. The problem is if you go too far the other way, which kind of happened in the Amanis discussion, where, you know, it varies a little bit depending on the head, like that peak and stuff. And some people took that as, well, you know, these are going to vary on my head, and on my head, they are perfect. It's like, okay, that's also not how that works. You know, if something's very far from diffuse field neutral or Harman target or whatever, it's not going to vary to such a significant degree and in all the right ways, such that suddenly this is exactly right on, you know, bang on. That's also not true. I think that the ideal solution is that people understand the limitations of the measurements a little bit better, and that the measurements are provided in a more perceptually relevant way, which is why I really like the HPTF variation stuff, because then, even though again that's still not perfect at the moment, it's a lot better than the absolutism that people apply to certain single line measurements, but also doesn't just leave open the complete uncertainty for we have no idea how or to what degree this is going to vary. It takes a lot of the guesswork.
I have a question for you guys. Are you guys defining this in terms of single metric, like something like MDAX, for example, where that itself is the thing, and you get several different scores there, or are you defining it in terms of like something like a SYNED ranking, or another example would be like a ranking list, like a Chronicles ranking list, for example, right? That's single metric in the sense that it's dual metric in the sense that it has tonality and subjective stuff, right? But then the actual ranking itself is effectively a single ranking.
I'm more thinking of the like actual single thing, like as in with headphones, people actually just judging whether a headphone is good or bad based solely on target adherence and
or on the PPR score. Like PPR score is goodness. Like
or SYNAD being the definitive answer as to how good something is. Like, yeah.
I got you. All right. What's the other side?
So, at a meta level, we talk a lot about the fact that people don't want to, and frankly shouldn't have to, get into the data, which is frankly something that we, people who are literally paid for this, still have issues with at times, right? Like if you showed the four of us headphone measurements, we would have more consensus than the average group about how good a headphone is based on that data. But we still wouldn't actually be uniform in our impressions of it because we're all interpreting it a little bit differently. For end users, a single goodness score is objectively what we should want, right?
Like, and I don't disagree with that.
Yeah, wanting
a single score that actually does kind of work would be good, and to some degree, you know, target curve adherence to Harman is better than just not knowing what a headphone's going to sound like. 100%. It's just that I think a lot of the time, for again both source gear and headphones, people treat it as this is solved when it's not. It's important to both not put too much faith in it and also not to treat it as if it's not useful at all. Both of these approaches, I think.
Somebody also raises an important thing here: is that are you considering ergonomics as a metric? Like, does goodness here just refer to sound quality, like whatever the metric is that we're talking about?
I mean, in audio, I think the sound quality and the sort of objective data is the main thing, and the thing that we're the question was formed around.
I'm sort of passing the buck downstream a little bit here. I'm saying, you know, we could have, suppose you had a website where you were giving basically like headphone scores, overall and you have just one score to give, does that one score include everything to do with it, or is it just a score? Like, because I kind of feel like that's impossible to do if you have to factor in things like ergonomics.
Well, so I mean, it is something that could be done, right? Like the thing is, the more dimensions you add to a score, the more difficult it is to make something
Mhm.
that's predictive, right?
Yeah.
Like you could make a model that figures out how comfortable IEMs are going to be to people on average based on the dimensions and based on variations in human ear geometry. And it wouldn't be perfect, but there are for the same reason there are trends in what people do find more comfortable, there would still be some predictive power. However, it's much harder to do that than it is to say, is this car noisy inside, right? Like you can do an NVH rating for a car. You can do how generally good is the FR of this headphone rating. And frankly, ideally we would, right? Like ideally, people who don't understand this topic, who don't want to understand any of it, would come in and get something like PPR, and then some subjective impressions on how it fits on the head, and then their own impressions on how it looks, and then they'd go away able to find the device that they want.
Are
And
you
that'd be
are you
great.
familiar with See, I actually think that people are smarter than you give them credit for.
Oh, I don't think it's not smart to want to not have to do the research. Like it's just
No,
economical
that's
with your
fair.
time.
That's fair. Yep. No,
Like
that
is
is fair.
it in
I
any way not smart to not want to
Okay,
waste
but
time?
I'm sure, but at what point is it no less, like, I think there's probably a point at which it's no less work to have two things that you're looking at and holding the right, like, what does reducing things to
It's
a
the
single index.
interpretation that is the hard part, not the number of
Okay, but
metrics.
hear me out here. Are you familiar with Doug DeMuro, the car
I
guy?
mean, somewhat.
Or
I am aware of his existence. I don't
so
particularly
he
care for his car reviews.
Sure, but he does this. Does this sort of review scoring system where he scores things along two separate criteria depending on what the car's like. He has a weekend score and I think an everyday score, something like that. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but basically he came up to the issue of, well, not all cars are for the same thing, and some people are looking to buy cars for every day. Some people are looking to buy a second car for fun. And so how do I combine that into one score? I can't. So now we have two. I don't know if this is exactly his thought process on it, but like, there's basically, you can basically discern what's relevant to you from his rankings because he has two scores. Where if he just had one, it would be far more difficult to actually, parse that. So to me, it's like, as far as like people actually engaging with a ranking or a single metric or a single score, I I don't know that it's harder for them to engage with two.
Yeah, I don't think that 2 is a problem, but I think that 2 has all the same problems as 1, right? Like the question here is whether a condensed ranking is generally something that is a good thing or a bad thing. And my position is that conceptually it's a good thing because it's respectful to the time of people who don't want to.
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
in
like,
that sense, I think we all agree. I don't think there's any disagreement on like condensing thing or making things. It's just the practice of making things more intelligible at the end of the day, and there's nothing wrong with that.
yeah, I mean, like the metaphor I use is like ratings, right?
Mhm.
None of us would use ratings for headphones,
Mhm.
but when I want to buy a vacuum cleaner, if Project Farm hasn't done something on it, then I'll look at ratings,
Mhm.
My thought
And
process.
admittedly, Project Farm is the inverse of this, where
Yes.
he'll do a whole bunch of hyper-specific tests, and that is who I'd prefer. But that's because I have, if not diagnosable autism, at least some traits of hyper-focus on detail. For the majority of products I buy, I just want, is this good enough? Is this going to be a good buy? Will it work fine? And it'd be... Now, this said, I actually am playing both sides, so no matter what, I lose in this argument, because the thing is,
or
in
you win.
audio, winners never lose, losers never win. Anyway, the flip side of this is that in audio, what we pathologically do is we take a measurement and we try to turn it into a goodness score.
Mhm.
And
And it
almost
always
invariably, this is because it's not a goodness score; it's a measurement.
However,
Like,
the prompt for this is why is using a single metric to judge a product, good or bad, SYNAD score, and specifically target adherence that are referenced. I don't think that's necessarily what's being addressed with let's just reduce things to make things more intelligible for people.
Well, yeah, and that's sort of the problem, though, is that because our industry is stupid, what we tend to do is instead of being like, okay, there are a number of factors we know can influence human preference on something, let's make a model that predicts preference. We're just like, okay, I have a number. This
Yeah, of
number
course.
is now my god.
Right.
And that's fucking
So
stupid.
so there is a sense in which doing this reduction for the benefit of predicting goodness for somebody or for these products has led to misinterpretation and then misuse. Right? And that's precisely what Cameron has been worried about in his initial
Yeah.
opening salvo.
Well, and it's an inevitability, right? Like, the measures that we have are measures of convenience, like SINAD. I mean, SINAD in particular is one that has no particular reason to still exist. People get mad when I'm like, it's ancient, but the reason I bring up that it's ancient is the reason that THD plus noise existed as a measure is because it was possible to measure in an era before semiconductors.
Mhm.
Like, the way you used to measure total harmonic distortion plus noise / SINAD is you would play a single tone, and then you would play that same tone with a notch filter, and you would compare the voltages you measured with a fucking analog voltmeter between those two conditions to get your ratio. Like, the reason that exists at all is because once upon a time, that was the best they could come up with in a time when buying three capacitors and 3 inductors was a meaningful investment for a measurement. That this has no meaningful correlation with sound quality is kind of inevitable. But
yeah,
I mean, it's true also of FR. Like, I was commenting to Sean on whatever the new Twitter is, Blue Sky, about this. But one of the things about FR is that we use a visualization for FR, which is just the output of a Fourier transform, right? And then we've said, oh, well, obviously, human hearing is logarithmic, so I guess we should use a log scale, approximately. But the visual magnitude of FR has no actual relationship to the subjective audible magnitude of FR, which is something that's quantifiable. Like, right, that's something that is in the study of data presentation. You can figure out what line variation would correspond to, to the same perceived intensity of tone color deviation. But we don't. So right now, what we just have is the line that our mathematical formula puts out, graphed in a way that we just have basically arbitrarily chosen. So it's almost magical thinking. I don't know. Like, there has to be some kind of fallacy for, because a thing exists, it must have bearing on something, or it must be like directly related to something. It's like we've sort of stumbled upon this thing which is correlated in some way, and then rather than looking deeply into it, we just said, okay, well, this now is going to be the tea leaves that I read to find what's good.
Yeah, it does happen a lot in audio, specifically that fallacy.
Well, I mean, in the analysis of it, but also in the existence of products.
Yeah,
Well,
no,
and I think it's
absolutely,
partially
in any part of
because
unpacking products.
Yeah,
and you see it in other fields, I will say. I mean, like,
Oh, of course.
you see wherever there is a simple to understand metric where higher is better, you will see it gamed, right? And that's Mark was referencing Goodhart's law earlier, and that's absolutely true. And that's true of horsepower in cars. That's true of 0 to 60 in cars. That's true of, like the heating power of a heat gun. That's true of the torque of a tool. Like, people will game parameters that ends up with a device that isn't actually holistically better for purpose.
this one
Just
goes
because,
to 11.
yeah, just because you can advertise the number. Amplifier power. That's a fantastic example of that, where Yeah. So
Yeah, there's been a fair few examples of that.
I think it's just sort of an issue of humans want a simple proxy for this is better. And
Mhm.
rather than do the work to make good proxies, we tend to just pick whatever objectively quantifiable metric is convenient,
So
even when often it's not pertinent.
yeah. So I think actually in that sense we are all probably agreed that
Yeah.
more intelligible
The
is
question has been answered. Like
Yeah.
we have told why judging products by a single metric is good and why judging
And
products by a
bad.
single metric is bad.
Yeah. And
So we've taken
ultimately
all
am-
available positions.
it's bad right
I'm-
now, but it doesn't mean that it
Yes.
necessarily need be bad.
Yeah.
It's a good goal to strive for. The problem is just that if you treat it as if it's a solved issue before it's actually a solved issue, then it can be damaging. I am curious though, Blaine, because you mentioned earlier on that you were a little bit more on the side of Synad good.
That's what I was surprised. I was like,
so
what?
no, so okay, actually, you know what? No, hold on. I'm gonna take a second and I'm gonna steelman this. Synad, in an era where we are blessed with very cheap, high gain transistors, integrated circuits that can be very precise, you can, with Synad, determine if something is going to be almost certainly inaudible in its contributions for noise and distortion. Now, Synad is bad because by aggregating the noise figure and the distortion figure, you create a bar which is literally 8 orders of magnitude harder to clear for inaudibility than it should be for distortion. But nonetheless, it's better that people at least know. And this is something that actually matters, because I forget sometimes how shit some devices are, but I was seeing people talking on Reddit recently. Someone's like, I like lower sensitivity headphones so I don't hear DAC hiss. That shouldn't be a thing in 2025, right?
Cries in Campfire Andromeda.
I mean, yes, the Campfire Andromeda also shouldn't be a thing. But there are devices that just have incredibly high noise floors, and that's something that Synad will punish, and it's good that that happens.
I think my main issue with it though is just the fact that like Synad it's not Synad as a figure that is necessarily problematic. It's the fact that people treat Synad at 1 kilohertz at this level as this fully encapsulates the performance of the device. Hang on, let me put this on screen.
Yeah, no, I
At
mean,
the end of the day, the problem is with the audio file.
I've been having
If
this
I
problem
measured
actually
this
recently.
At 1 kilohertz, you'd get like 92 dB Synad. At 10 kilohertz, you get 30. Like, just if you were to just look at the normal Synad stuff, that's not at all representative of how the product behaves. And then there's various other areas where, like, that dynamic intermodulation distortion stuff's massive. And there's so many other things about a product which can be different, even if Synad doesn't change. Like in the video tomorrow, I mentioned the one, the GoldenSound edition, because the spatial enhancement, that's kind of a good example where you can measure Synad. You can measure other stuff. You can measure Synad, multitone, THD versus frequency, THD versus level, multi-tone testing, IMD, the filter, whatever you want to do. None of them change, and yet it sounds completely different. And it's not that we can't measure it, it's just that Synad doesn't tell you what's changing, and people need to stop treating it as if it does, because Synad doesn't even tell you what the Synad is across all frequencies,
or levels.
And if you want to learn more about that, check out Golden's video that's coming tomorrow. That's going to go very deep into this.
That's going to get a throw on ASR, I'm sure, but we'll see.
That'll be fun.
No, that'll be fun. I don't know if anything you're saying is really
I haven't seen
actually
this, so.
controversial. It's just I
don't think so, no. I mean, I'm trying to think what the most controversial thing I say in it is. I tried to keep it quite balanced.
It's based on your talk from CanJam, right?
Yeah, it's basically an extended version of the talk. I added some stuff specific to headphones because the talk at CanJam was originally mostly about source gear. So it's like I've cut it down to about 45 minutes now, so it's not over an hour. But
it could be long.
I'm curious to see what the discussion surrounding it is going to be, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. All right. I don't think we need a poll for this because I think we actually all agree on the position at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, really, this was a false conflict because ultimately the question is just, if this is done right, is it good? And the answer is obviously yes. And is this usually done right? And the answer is obviously no.
let's move to
I
spicy
was
hour,
just
guys.
surprised with like earlier on when you said no. I think
Yeah.
cyanide. I was like, wait, what? Where's that going?
Let's move to spicy hour. Pepper's in
Let
the
the
chat
spice
for folks.
flow.
I do want to quickly, once again, I mentioned this before. I want to once again though shout out the music that I've been listening to, which is incredible for testing, for not testing, but for
Is it
listening
just that
to.
same violin record?
It's so good, dude. It's insane. So it's
Senseless violins.
Adam Baldich.
Oh, his
Adam
recordings are
Baldich Quintet, I think. He's a Polish violin viola player. The album is called Legend. And if you have good headphones, okay, so like actually I agree with you, listener. This is actually not great for evaluating because it cheats. It sounds good on so much stuff that probably isn't that good. But if you have good headphones or you think you have good headphones, listen to this album because it's all those, like textural qualities and all the details and the quimble and whatever else, which
his
don't look up that term.
Casa Caglia. I think it's called. I don't know how you pronounce it. Album is fantastic.
And he's got a new one coming out called something.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, there's like 3 tracks from it that's available at the moment, and then I don't know when the rest of it's coming, but
it's very, very well recorded violin, very well recorded string quartet that is difficult to do. Like violin is not an easy, or at least the ones that I typically come across, violin recordings are piss poor, but this one is very good. Yeah. Okay. Anyway,
So-
spicy hour. Let's go.
Watashi Kini Narimasu says JM1 isn't the new market meta. JM1 with treble oddities, then IEF 2020 between 200 1000 hertz, then bass shelf is the new meta. And new meta still doesn't sound good enough.
I think this is a troll about the. This is
No, he's
trolling
right.
about but
I don't know what it means.
Yeah, is this about?
I
like,
thought
the
it was really
history of-
funny that Blaine decided to read that one.
Well, nobody else can remember how to say that guy's name.
Oh, that's true. It has to be you. Fair.
But this is just about like categorizing what the market trends are, right?
Oh,
So
that's boring.
If a company refuses to keep spare parts in stock, like Sennheiser's old model pads, they should make those components designs public to enable production of proper generic alternatives. Good luck with that.
Yeah, never
Yeah, I
gonna
mean, here's the biggest problem you would have there with pads. Like for mechanical parts, sure, but for pads, a lot of times those change like while the spec remains the same, and it's something that manufacturers have to hunt down because controlling the acoustic properties of the foam and fabric used is not always that easy for your suppliers. Like, I think
Oh.
that it would actually be a lovely idea. I don't think it would solve the problem that you're hoping it would, but I do think that there is some merit to the idea of making long-term replacement parts viable. The main issue, of course, is that 95% of users at minimum are not going to actually source replacement parts. So
What was
the
interesting
effort
about
involved.
that thread that Sennheiser started on Reddit was that literally everyone was saying you guys need to fix your replacement part situation because it's been terrible for years.
And it's been
And-
recently reanimated as a result of people wanting that and not being able to get it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Although it's kind of ironic because they actually have a better replacement
Think about-
part situation than a lot of other places.
Then
It's just
most,
that-
and think about how many headphones you can't even do that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the thing is, Sennheiser's suffering from success because they have a
Yeah.
lot of headphones that people want to own for more than a year.
Yes.
I mean, they're shooting themselves in the foot in that respect. All right.
This is why
no,
we need FOMO audio.
Yeah, no, this is fair. In the year from Rob Hawk, in the year 2025, find what you like and hold on tight.
Thank you, Rob.
If society continues to exist for the year. All right.
We live in a society. Bottom text.
For now. Sennheiser, not under Sonova, should start putting professional label on their products if Sonova is going collab with Hatsune Miku.
Hatsune.
Yes, that. Yeah, and actually, it might help with some of the confusion, I think, for people in general. If they, I mean, but wait, don't they have the pro designation for the pro audio
They're
side of
the
things?
way
anyway?
that they separate the divisions between the like technically two different companies is really confusing and somewhat inconsistent. I think it's honestly that's not helping them.
Yeah.
I don't think it seems.
It's funny
very
because
both-
the best
Yeah.
Sennheiser headphone that's come out in a long time has been the HD490 Pro, but that's not
Hmm.
the consumer division. That's
Yeah.
the pro.
You
side
look
of
at that thing and you know it's not consumer because it actually does something interesting.
Oh, so cynical. I thought Blaine is rubbing off on you.
I've always been cynical about Sennheiser. It's because I like them. You
Yeah.
don't see me getting super upset when Hi-Fi Man releases another headphone and it's just marginally different. Because it's my expectation.
Yeah. See, people were coming after me for saying the Sindara. The only reason I didn't like the Sindara closed was because it isn't a Sindara. It's like, well, that's not the reason why. It's just
By
bad.
the way, in the scrapped version of the thumbnail, the frequency response I used was the
Was
Sundara.
that I know.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
saw-
you knew?
I
Okay.
could
Wasn't sure.
tell from the the single metric to dominate. Oh, sorry, the single metric to determine if a headphone / IEM. Get out of here, Blaine. Determine if a headphone / IEM is good is the FR if the product in question is the Audivine.
No, I mean, like, generally speaking, this is the point we're making. Although, ironically, I mean, that shows where PPR falls down, right? Like,
Yeah.
Sean made the PPR model with generally sane headphones, and that headphone is insane. So it actually scores reasonably on PPR, but people don't actually receive it well.
Mhm.
So it's an example of where you need actually a fairly precise model. And honestly,
but
it may be
you
one
can
where
game
our
that
intuition.
pretty easily. I made a really bad sounding headphone that scored well on PPR.
Yeah. I mean, it's always possible to do. And that's the thing. And that's why models need to be tested. And when they break, they need to be improved.
Okay, I lost my place.
Audiophiles were so deprived of bass in the last decade. Now all audiophiles love bass heavy tuning, especially sub bass by Bash.
I don't think that's true.
Yeah, I don't really think that's.
Well, there was a trend where like if you bought a nice high end headphone, you would you would look for like that was there in opposition to the bass heavy consumer tunings, and that meant that you would get like people getting like the DT880s and stuff like that because they were like real headphones, or Grados, right? Another example. I'm not saying that was
I think
good.
that's
think
actually
there
an
was-
incorrect history.
preferences changing though. I think that's just because a lot of the consumer stuff went way too heavy on the bass
So-
thing.
I don't know about the history of it, Blaine, but because you are older than me in audio years. I mean more in terms of the narratives that I kept seeing, which was along the lines of this is the most correct or the most real or the most truthful or whatever, all that stuff, right? And everything else is just exaggerated. And so there was a reverence for that kind of sound.
The thing is,
But
I don't
know
think
that
we've seen.
I don't think preferences have actually changed
I don't think we've seen a big explosion of bassy headphones either.
in IEMs.
Like, well, that's so I asked him to clarify in chat.
Oh,
'cause
okay.
I don't think that's true of headphones, but of IEMs, I also think IEMs were bassier before the Harman research came out. It's just the bass was less like contrasty. There was less of a difference between bass and low mid range than there was after the Harmony research came out.
Do you mean because Westone existed?
I mean, yeah, there were a ton of brands doing things where it was like just a bunch of mud.
Yeah.
But it was like, technically more bass.
One more triple driver. All right.
Yeah, I mean,
You meant in IEMs. I could see why you would think.
I think with the bass thing, people kind of overstate the significance of Beats by Dre in that respect. I don't know. It's like people treat that as being like a movement that predated itself, whereas what it actually was that when Beats came out, the median person's experience with headphones was a non-ceiling in-ear, like a flathead. And so, as a distinctive selling point, they made a headphone that had very emphasized bass, and then somehow it became the consensus that that's what everyone thought everyone wanted, as opposed to what was basically a marketing gimmick that honestly didn't last that long. Like, I don't know.
Greg reviews the SR Lambda does not have linear bass.
I just have to shout
well,
out the,
that
it
depends
actually
on how well it
feels.
couples.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to shout out
Well, if you
the
couple it too well, it breaks. So
the best take
I've
here.
had 2 pairs of it.
Anime Golem says one of the core benefits of EQ is you can forever exploit the placebo response for endless scaling and gains.
Dude, Golem, that's so good.
Endless scaling.
I love that take.
Infinite
I love
scaling
that
with EQ.
Yeah. Every new EQ is better. Just just game the treadmill, just all the way up.
Honestly, this is actually why I think that people who are big in the snake oil stuff should get into DIY, because you can save so much money if instead of being like, I bought a new Bryston amplifier, you're just like, oh yeah, I just got in a new kind of metal foil resistor in my amplifier and it sounds sick now. And that's like $10, you know? It saves you a lot of money.
Yeah. Heart you talking about the Sindara close, there might be a revision or unit variation is astronomical. My guess is the latter. I mean, it's entirely possible that there's a revision too, because they may have switched to different magnets or something. I have no idea. But so the big issue, though, I mean, there are many issues throughout the frequency response, but the biggest one is a massive peak at around 9 kilohertz. But that 9 kilohertz peak could be in different spots depending on the unit. So yeah, could be, but I would expect it to be unit variation. Any other?
Oh, this one's spicy.
R0 has a question, which was, how would you tune a theoretical HD 900?
I would have it perfectly match my HRTF, be extremely low acoustic impedance, and
tune is FR.
I'm joking around. Yeah, I tune it. Okay, that's a good question. Like HD 900, so we're assuming low acoustic impedance, right? So that's at least a core function of it, right? Then as far as the actual sound that you get, it opens up a lot more possibilities if it's really low acoustic impedance. So you could say I would try to tune it a little bit more neutral or a little bit more balanced in the treble. That would be my main thing, and I would have the ear gain be closer to 3 kilohertz, not 3.5 or wherever it is.
To me, the answer is pretty, like, you bump up the area between 1 and 2K a bit.
Yeah.
You notch down somewhere in the mid treble a bit, maybe 5K, maybe 6K. You notch down the mid bass a little bit, again, 200-ish hertz. You boost the sub bass, and you end up, hey, wow, look what you end up with. It's the HE1.
I don't know that I agree with that, because the HE1 also has the dip between 1 and 2 kilohertz.
Yeah,
but it's not as extreme. It's not as extreme.
It's not.
People get on. God, people get on me from both sides about this. I'm like, they have similar upper mids, and they're like, no, it's got more ESTAT upper mids.
Welcome to the world of headphone reviews, man. People come at you from both sides.
I'm not saying we should HD 600 it. I'm just saying that it could be particularly. It could be a little bit less of a downslope.
Yeah.
HD 800 too warm. It's not a spicy take, it's a question, but it is a good question. Do you think multi-driver trends in full-size headphones, like some hi-fi companies are experimenting with, will be successful? I'm kind of curious to get your takes on this. I personally don't, just because I feel like with
it doesn't bring any advantage.
The only multi-driver headphone worth listening to is the Skedra phone.
Yeah. Skedra's phone's really fun. Well, he's not doing like 2 drivers with different tunings or anything, though. His was basically, I'm gonna put 2 drivers in a headphone and make it bassy because why the hell not?
I can't believe he didn't call it the sked phone. That's actually the biggest missed opportunity.
Can I actually answer the HD 900 question?
Sure. Yeah.
Yes.
I can show people how I would tune it.
Oh my god. Look at this nerd. Nerd.
That's right. That's right. Wait, where's the screen capture? Okay. So I'm just going to show you based on 2 rigs. I have 2 different rigs with a 650 measurement here. The dotted line.
Wait,
I would do the dotted line.
It's oh, hold on.
Yeah, it's dancing back and forth because I'm making it dance back and forth.
What? It's difficult to read.
Okay, I'll show you the 5128.
Why you gotta
You're
do
probably
this?
more familiar with
You gotta
that.
do this
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah. I'd
So
move that ear
you
gain
just
down
want
frequency a little bit.
Yeah, but
so
that's never
this
gonna
is just
be...
listener Harmon.
Yeah, this is never gonna be because here's.
I mean,
the
Harman
problem-
has a lot more bass than this, but yes, essentially yes, it would be pretty close to their 2013 target. Ooh.
This is not. See, I feel like this actually loses the essence of what the HD8 or the high-end HD whatever series is about, which is some sort of affectation, right? Like, is it?
Yeah, I don't care about that.
Okay,
I just want it to be
but you say
open.
like, well, what? Because that's not an answer to what the HD 900 would be. It's what would the ideal headphone be, and then that would be that, right?
Well, the HD 900 could be the ideal headphone
be,
if
I
it
see what you're
scrapped the affectation crap, stayed comfortable and open, and just
mean,
had a
that
good tuning.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, I
It
don't
does have a
disagree
good
with that.
tuning though. I'll fight you.
I'll fight you.
I mean, I think we know who'll win that one.
Munich's not.
Blaine has
Pipe
more
cleaner
knives.
boy.
What's up?
I've called you pipe cleaner boy.
Pipe cleaner? Oh.
But Griffin, I actually looking at that
Damn.
response, I bet that would sound pretty good. I would just
Yeah,
have
of course
have
it
a
would.
little bit. I would just have it have a bit less ear gain and maybe a little bit more treble. But otherwise, I think that's pretty solid. Okay. Let's see. Other spicy takes. I've lost my place, so if there were other ones, I may have missed them. IEM
Sorry,
slash headphone
Ash,
technicality.
don't
Oh, go
book
ahead.
flights for February if that's what you're thinking. It's in May, not February.
Oh. IEM slash headphone technicality may just be whether the config makes the drivers do stupid things. And this is actually kind of true. I mean, like, I'm not saying drivers do stupid things here, but for a lot of people, it may just be wonky response and it's doing things to the sound, to the music. Like the playback equipment is imparting colorations like the AB1266, if that's what you mean. If you mean making it behave, the driver behave in a nonlinear manner, then I don't know about that. Anything else, guys?
This one is actually spicy. I don't know if okay, I'm gonna read it. Spicy take. This is from the last Rhino. Spicy take. ZMF is toxic and wants to tell a fair reviewer like Super that his ears are hearing it wrong because he is not wearing it properly and not doing enough research.
I mean, this is I feel like this is pretty common with most boutique or boutique brands, or like the brands in the high end to do the esoteric. Like I'm thinking of we got similar kind of reactions from in the RAL discussion for the Amanis. Par for the course.
The default response is skill issue if people don't like something that they're supposed to like. It's just sort of the question of how that skill issue take manifests exactly.
Wait, are you saying skill? They're saying skill issue, or are you saying skill issue?
Okay, they are saying skill issue. Like that is what manufacturers always say. Okay, not invariably. Sometimes it's everybody's ears are different.
And this is why I got to give credit to Antonio and the folks at Meze. I've never seen them say that. They've never done that to when I've criticized or when other people they've just, we realize if once you review it the way that you like to review products, I can understand your criticism. That was it. I was like, holy shit. Like that's super dope that they would, just
We've
let
kind
people
of given a
review.
shout out to Head a few times for similar
Oh yeah,
reasons as well. I just got to point out because
Yeah.
actually, me and DMS
I
did
was
the
about to
review
bring them up.
last week, and in that video, I said that like just I'd had a couple more issues with it than Douglas did, just HRTS/HPTF differences. After that video, Dimitri actually reached out and said, "Hey, would you mind, or would you be willing to do some testing and stuff, trying out some new things, specifically because yours didn't work with it, and we want to try and accommodate that a little bit more in a new thing," which is awesome. Like that's really cool to see. So just big shout
I
out.
feel
to
like
Dimitri.
I feel like we like glaze Dimitri every episode of this podcast.
I mean, listen, I love Dimitri.
I wish
He's a
more
lovely
manufacturers
man.
would do things like that. I mean,
I
the
will say
ZMF
We
thing,
Freddie
wouldn't
is
do it if it
also
wasn't
very
great.
chill.
I'm just saying, like
Okay.
it's a common theme at this point.
So
I mean,
Chad is
I've
saying
only
W
gone
Head. I will
through-
say it would be a W if their product was better.
well, but maybe it will be because they're taking feedback, right?
Yes, that would be a true W. Right now, they're just incredibly good losers.
I think the only thing that, because I've only just skimmed through the thread on Headphone with the ZMF thing, and I've not.
I'm not
looked at-
familiar with. Yeah, I have not followed. I just
general
saw it
summary
today,
was that
so.
Super Review did a review on the Boca. I think it was the Boca Open. He
Close.
didn't like it that much subjectively, and he showed some measurements, which, as I understand it, but I said I've not looked to compare myself yet. I literally just skimmed through shortly before the stream. Apparently, his measurements didn't exactly line up with some other people's, and part of it was what Zach was saying was that part of it's because where the driver is shifted forward, and where Mark had said that he wears the headphones further forward, that means that the driver isn't where it's going to be for most people wearing it, which
Well, but how do we
could
know
be
that?
a fair criticism. So
We don't.
I think it's also important
don't.
just to mention that like,
I actually
well,
don't think that's a fair
it's not
criticism.
fair to discredit what Mark said. Like, it's not fair to say that, oh, that's wrong or that's inaccurate. But it's also fair to say that it may not be representative.
There's a bunch of stuff going on there, man. Like, on the one hand, this is the most common sort of example of, like, manufacturers trying to control the narrative around their products. I see it so commonly. I see it all the time. I don't necessarily blame them for doing it, but because there's a following there, then now this turns into criticism of the reviewer and, blacklisting and whatever else. I'm not saying he's doing that in this case. I'm just saying, like, that's the kind of thing that happens from this. And, you get bandwagoning and whatever else, right? Or anti-bandwagon. I don't know. You get what I mean.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think
I feel like in this case there is both of what you and Cameron are saying is true. I just think in terms of the criticism of the measurement itself, it's kind of really hard to tell if it's representative or not. Because none of us are hearing Mark's unit.
Send it to me. I'll do it.
Yeah.
Mark, if you're in chat, send it to me.
No, but it's also like it's really hard to compare Mark's measurement done on a different rig to Zach's measurement done on a different rig. Maybe with a different set of pads, maybe with the mesh on and off. I feel like...
Well, but also the fault is with the folks who are taking that as absolute, because they will, and that's the canonical reading of the data anyways, including the manufacturers, right? We know that this is like a big blind spot for everybody. So the fact that there's disagreement about it that may not actually be...
Mark really doesn't just graph sniff. Like, he's not just sitting there looking at the graph telling you how it sounds based on that. He's relaying his experience and then showing you the graph of the headphone on that head that isn't his own.
Yeah, I will say, like, as he says, it's not his usual measuring methodology / how he wears it, like the way that it's suggested, right? I will say, when I heard the Boca Open, I remember I wrote as part of my, like, CanJam impression.
It was the closed, by the way.
Oh,
no. It was the Boca closed.
Oh, this was the closed? I thought this was the open.
Nope, closed.
Can you confirm, Mark? Is this the closed or the open? The one that said Noka.
He has only measured the closed.
Oh, okay. I thought this was the open for some reason.
The last Rhino saying, "Stop! This is not about the measurement." Deep down, Zach is telling Mark he should like the sound he hears, and that he's not wearing it like a typical user, and therefore he effectively extending from what he actually said, that him not liking it is his fault and not the product. I think we're all kind of on the same page that, like, a manufacturer telling a reviewer that them not liking a product is wrong isn't okay.
Yeah,
like, that's
I
not
do feel like
to decide, quite frankly.
That interpretation
We're discussing the measurement because that is the bit where they're... I was going to say we're discussing the measurement because there is room to debate the. I think there's a bit of a material issue debate and a messaging issue debate. Here, but
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
focusing on this
I
trait
kind of don't want to
because
comment on it too much
I don't
until I've
really know
actually read
what's
through
going
it.
on with the motivations of any party involved.
Yeah, I don't really want to comment on it too much until I've actually read through and looked
Yeah,
at some other
no.
measurements a bit as well.
I've
Like,
I've seen this movie
saw it.
before, is all I'm saying, and it's not it's not uncommon.
It's a classic.
Yeah, actually, a good example was the I think for one of the DCA headphones, it shipped with instructions on how to measure it, which was to place it in a certain condition, which kind of goes back to the ITU
Yeah,
standard that Blaine was talking about, which is kind of interesting. But I'm not saying that like in that case, the example for me, it was more comfortable in the less sound good position, right?
Yeah.
And so I felt it was kind of like, well, now I'm just cherry picking the good measurements if I'm doing this.
I have a question for you guys, and I want to hear your thoughts on it. Do you think the average user shifts the headphone to be its most comfortable, or shifts it to be its best
Most
sound?
comfortable, most comfortable for sure.
Right?
Most comfortable,
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And ideally a product should be designed to sound good where it is most comfortable. Obviously that can't necessarily be universally applicable to everyone because everyone's head's going to be slightly different.
Yeah.
And there's some headphones where like I kind of have to wear it where I know it doesn't sound as good because otherwise it is uncomfortable.
Yeah, I'm not gonna
but, you know,
I'm not gonna
that's
endure physical discomfort over this shit. That's insanity.
Yeah. But on the flip side, I can also understand, somebody being frustrated when they see measurements that they feel are done improperly for whatever reason, right? Like, say, for example, if they know that I'm thinking of there's one situation in particular where there was a headphone measured with a leak, and it showed like a bass drop off, and clearly that for anybody who's measured that those headphones know, it's like, okay, that doesn't actually behave like that, but it's being represented that way.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah,
problem.
with how many measurers there are and how this is something that Slade, Lifelong Caboose, had brought up.
Oh
in
yeah,
a
shout out
thread
to
of
Slade.
Goldens.
Yeah, shout out to Slade.
Yeah, that with the proliferation of so many clone rigs, and this is something we've I think already discussed on this stream, is that more measurements are available, therefore the quality is kind of lower on average for that reason. Like what used to be solely the vestige of nerds who would spend way too much on measurement gear that was usually industry standard and would go in deep onto operation procedure and how to present that stuff. Now it's a lot more accessible, which means it's done by a lot of people who maybe aren't caring so much about that stuff. But that does mean as a manufacturer, you might encounter a lot of bad measurements of your own gear. And, I don't want to sound like I'm making it sound like it's common, because I really don't think it is.
You want to put the onus on the manufacturer to release good data.
That's what I want. That is absolutely what I want.
And I would agree. I think that's the answer. It's like if you're going to scrutinize people's, rightly or wrongly, scrutinize reviewers' data, put out your own and do it well.
And that's kind of the issue I had with the Amanis situation. It's like he sort of took issue with our description, and then it's like, okay, well, there's no measurements been provided, so you can't actually say that this is wrong. And then when there were measurements provided that kind of aligned with what we said originally, it's like, well, now you're using these wrong or not doing it how I would do it. And it's like, okay, well, do it then. And I mean, that one even got to the point where I said, okay, well, a friend's going to lend me his unit so I can review it. And then he's like, well, that unit's obviously going to be faulty and, not up to spec and stuff. So
okay. Hold on. Let's be clear about what Alexander said, because hyperbole helps nobody.
Well, and also
What
that
he
thread got
said-
yeeted. Like most of that thread got deleted.
Yes,
So I don't.
what Alexander said was, if there are any problems with it, he'd replace the ribbons. Now, you can take the implication there that if there's something, if you measured something and it didn't sound good, then he'd blame it on that. But you can also take
did
a different.
explicitly say that it's very likely that I would damage it. He did say that.
He did say that, yes,
It's
and
just
that
because you're young.
was quite rude. However, yeah.
Well, but like there is an element that I worry about with all of this. I mean, this is not specific to the ZMF situation, but like and the super thing. I worry about people getting branded as risky reviewers, or like and then blacklisted as a result. and because
Oh man, not the blacklist. How will I afford to feed my children anymore?
no, but it's, I mean, whatever, you guys, you don't need to review everything, but like it's just still kind of shitty because it's similar to like it's not the same as the Cameron situation where they tried to get his video taken down, but there is a sense in which it's trying to control a narrative, and if you from the manufacturer perspective, because you're scared of what they're going to say. I understand why they do it, but I think it's kind of shitty at the same time.
I just want
It's tricky, 'cause, like,
manufacturers to have better
as
measurements.
as a manufacturer, you want to. There are bad measurements out there, right? We've given a couple examples, but there are definitely situations where I would say either the interpretation of measurements can be unfair, or just the measurements themselves are just outright taken wrong, and it's making the product look bad when actually it's not necessarily the fact that the product is bad. But at the same time, you kind of have to be willing to put your money where your mouth is a little bit, and provide this data yourself. If you're genuinely really worried that other people are going to all mess it up, do it properly yourself.
Yep.
We live in the time of data. We're not going back to the before times. And I just see the comment there from Last Rhino. I think Mark will be fine. I think Mark will be okay. So I don't want to make it seem like that's oh, he's now in the bad reviewer bin. We're certainly all there. We've been there already. Oh, okay, interesting, Mark.
That would be great because it would make it more easily comparable to everyone else's data.
I think that's actually the easiest solution is to just put
Let me know if he or you want help with that.
I'm not aware of the feud between Amir and Danny from GR Research. There's so much of this stuff that I'm just not aware because I don't participate.
Danny from GR Research is such a weirdo.
Now, does that mean we have a feud with him?
With
Tell
Danny
me where
from
the
GR Research? I mean, I'm up for feuding with Danny from GR Research. He's pretty much speakers only, but he's very snake oily.
No, he does cables as well, doesn't he?
I know that there was a
he-
cable
he-
thing that in your video.
Yeah, the main issue I've not tried any GR research stuff. I've never spoken with Danny. The main issue that I sort of had with him was he did a video with Jay Ziyagi, or Next Best Thing Studio, but I'm not sure what the channel's called now. Jay, and they did a blind test showing that supposedly a difference in speaker cables was audible.
Yeah,
but the problem was that Danny was in the room whilst the cables were being changed. It looked like actually at one point you could even just see the cables through a gap, and there was I think 5 runs only done, so there was a fair few issues with it. But
I mean, it's the classic, we did a blind test, fails to observe any of the things that would make it meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We should probably end the stream because it's been almost 4 hours now, and that's too long. So Blaine says me and the podcast hosting platform.
Yes, you want me to do the outro.
Yeah, I would very much.
As always, this has been brought to you by headphones.com, your number one place to learn about and buy audio equipment. Headphones, DACs, speakers, cables, and probably other things I'm forgetting, all available at headphones.com with a limited selection also available on headphones.ca. As always, you should visit our Discord, discord.gg/headphones, as well as forum.headphones.com to talk to us. We took some of the topics we talked about today from a thread there, so if you'd like to have your topics on here, and they're good, then you should put them in there as well.
Many of them are
always, good. Yeah, well, a lot of them aren't, but some of them are. 24-hour live stream when? Yeah.
I would be
if you guys
so down.
buy enough stuff on headphones.com, we'll do a 24-hour live stream.
I would be so down.
It wouldn't be that hard.
This is true. Yeah.
But yes, If you like what we're doing here, be sure to buy on headphones.com. They are the ones who pay us. And you, of course, have the benefit of a 365-day return policy, which is unprecedented and unheard of in this industry.
Mhm.
And believe it or not, there aren't really any catches there, except that you can't like abuse it to just keep buying stuff and returning it over and over again. Eventually, we will stop you. But as long as you're not trying to be a jerk, you're in pretty good shape. And,
Rules for
yeah.
life. All right. And with that, we will see you guys in the next. Thanks to everybody for joining. Thanks to the chat for your good questions and spicy takes. And we will see you guys in the next one.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.